Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there to my actual left, as you cannot see on YouTube, unfortunately, is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I am doing well today. It's the last off-season show. It's the last week of doing one show per week, which is very exciting. Of course, after the show, we will have real Major League Baseball to talk about. We kind of have real baseball to talk about on this show, too, which is very exciting. But it's the last off-season show. Very cool.
Yeah, we definitely have some MLB level baseball to talk about that happened. You know, it did happen a little bit ago. I mean, we recorded and then two really good WBC games happened.
Yes.
With the Japan-Mexico for the semifinal and Japan-United States. I mean, we could briefly talk about Japan-Mexico because that was a really good game.
That was probably the best game of the entire tournament.
Yeah, it was, you know, Mexico got out to a 3-0 lead. Japan closed in to make it 3-3 on a Masataka Yoshida 3-run homer. Then Mexico made it 4-3, and then 5-3 at some point, or did they?
Yeah. No, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's at some point. Take a look at the box score.
Might have been 5-4.
They made it 5-3, and then Japan made it 5-4 in the 8th, and then in the bottom of the 9th,
Munetaka Murakami.
Yeah, Murakami, who's like my new guy to look for in Japan.
Yeah, he's your 2026 whatever team player to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really disappointed that we're probably gonna have to wait a while for him to potentially play in America if he ends up doing that.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea who the guy was up until that semifinal, and like right before the at bat, I looked up his Japan stats, and I'm like, oh my god.
He had like an 1100 something OPS last year.
Yeah, it was like 1160 or something, and that's in a league that had a 668 league OPS last year. So if they measured OPS plus, it would probably be like 250 something.
Yeah. Last
year, and he had 56 home runs, which people mentioned, and he hit the game-winning 2-run double to send it to the final.
Yeah, he did. Roki Sasaki also pitched in that game, who is a 21-year-old who threw 17 perfect innings at one point last year consecutively.
Yeah.
He's going to be posted before the 2027 season, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many stars on Japan that a lot of people were talking, like, after the final, a lot of people were saying, how would this team do in a 162-game MLB season? And I was like, bro, they just beat the team of MLB All-Stars.
Yeah.
What do you mean, how would they do in 162?
Yeah, they'd win 120 games at the minimum. Yeah, no, that's a silly question.
Yeah.
That's a very silly question. But yeah, that was fun. And then, the next day, I mean, everyone talks about the final out, but that was also a good game out there. Trey Turner hit another home run to put the U.S. ahead.
Only one run was scored, not a home run in the final.
Yeah.
It was an RBI ground out. That made the difference.
Take that, new rules. BABIP is not a factor. And then Murakami hit a home run.
Oh, he smoked that ball.
It was hit 115 miles per hour. So
it was one we were both watching, and as soon as he hit it, we were both like, "Oh."
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I was sort of rooting for USA, but not with a great passion.
I was just rooting for like a game that we were all talking about,
right.
And we got exactly that.
Yeah, I was. There was no feeling of when USA lost. For me personally, I know people watch the game differently. But when Murakami hit that ball, I just started breaking out in laughter because it was hit so hard, and it was pulled. It was hit 432 feet, but pulled, so it went second deck. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it did. Kyle Schwarber also had an at bat where he hit 1776 feet worth of fly balls.
Yeah.
Because he hit 2 foul balls that had the distance to go out, and then he hit another second decker off of Yu Darvish, who he also got in the playoffs last year for 480 feet.
Yeah, that one was hit 436 feet.
Yeah, people talked about Madison Bumgarner owning Clayton Kershaw. They talked about Rafael Devers owning Garrett Cole.
Yep.
Kyle Schwarber owns Yu Darvish.
Yeah, for at least in terms of projected distance, he has that. He could be 2 for 36 lifetime against Yu Darvish. That's what we'll remember about that matchup.
Exactly.
For the present moment. And yeah, I mean, ultimately it came down to that final at bat.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind with that when?
I'll tell you what wasn't going through my mind was Japan is 1 out away from winning.
Yeah.
That was the least amount of my. I was honestly very nervous throughout the entire at bat because I was like, okay, this is a once in a lifetime matchup we're getting here. It's got to be good because there were so many ways it could have been very anticlimactic, and that was the only thing going through my mind every single pitch. But we got the ending that we deserved.
Oh yeah, could you imagine just first pitch roll over to third?
That exactly. But if you go back and watch the at bat, Mike Trout takes the first pitch and he was never swinging at it, because he knew this can't end after one pitch.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Even just any field out would have been lame.
Right. Yeah. Even if it was that 3-2, 3-2 payoff pitch, and somehow Trout rolls that slider over to first base, and it's a unassisted ground out, that just wouldn't have been cool.
I was so nervous watching Ohtani versus Trout because there were so many ways it could have ended not in a cool way, but it did. The only things I would have accepted were a base hit or a strikeout.
Yep.
And we got the latter of those two.
Yeah, and I mean, a home run would have been absolutely nuts, but a strikeout was a great.
But also, you're asking someone to hit a home run off Shohei Ohtani.
That's very true. Yeah, he didn't allow very many home runs last year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's super cool. It's once in a lifetime, unless potentially Ohtani's not there next year. Where we could see it.
Well,
more
after the game, they asked Trout about it, and he said he won round 1.
Yep.
Implying there will be more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very true. And yeah, who knows? I guess Trout's 31, 32 right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, who knows how much longer both of them will be in their prime at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's true.
But Trout's not really outside of health. Trout hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. He's always
he still hit 40 home runs last year in 499 plate appearances.
Yeah. Yeah, he in a non-qualifying season he hit 40 home runs, put up a 999 OPS in a in a season where it was the lowest offensive numbers league-wide since 2014.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but so Mike Trout swung and missed at all 3 of the strikes. He's only done that in 24 out of his 6,000-something plate appearances. So that was very special for Shohei, obviously. Also, the slider on strike 3, unbelievable. Absolutely filthy.
Oh, yeah. It was he couldn't have located it any better. It's 3-2, so he's not really trying to throw a pitch out of the zone necessarily.
Yeah, it was a sweeper, which, as we discussed earlier, is the $5.99 a month slider.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was a sweeper. Yeah,
it was.
I mistook it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was a 87 miles per hour right on the outside corner. So if Trout took it, it would have been a strike. So it wasn't even a chase necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's pretty crazy. I want to see what Trout's whiff rate is, because Although,
I mean, his strikeout rate is pretty decent.
yeah, I because maybe this is me just hate, as I say in the intro, hating the romance of the game. He does have a whiff rate 3.1 percentage points below average, so
Yeah.
he's good at not swinging and missing. But me going away from the romance of the game was like I think someone asked for a ball
Yep. I was about to bring that exact point up.
after striking out Shohei Ohtani, and I'm like, that's I totally understand that. However, like statistically,
Yeah.
the guy, he's a great player, but he does strike out a good amount. Not that it really necessarily matters, but like hypothetically, if you strike out like Steven Kwan or Luis Arise, that's statistically more impressive.
That's the one you should be asking for the ball back.
Yeah, but but still, I totally understand it.
It is a funny point that you made.
Yeah,
The World Baseball Classic overall was honestly, it was probably the best thing to happen to the sport of baseball in our lifetimes. Like the Ohtani versus Trout matchup, like we had, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a hockey player, like a star hockey player. I think it was Connor McDavid or whatever his name is.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Out of Edmonton.
yeah. And he was like, yeah, like, did you see what baseball did? That was cool. We need more of that in hockey. And the tweet that I had was, when was the last time you saw a star player in another sport being like, yeah, we need what baseball has?
Right.
When does that ever get said?
Yeah, it just hasn't
Never.
really happened.
Never.
No.
The only, like, I think the only thing in my lifetime that can compare to that World Baseball Classic game was the World Series that the Cubs won.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because that took a team having a 108-year drought.
Exactly. Against another team that had like a 70-something year drought.
Yeah, if the Cubs had won one 5 years prior and Cleveland had won one 8 years prior, it wouldn't have had.
No.
It would have been an amazing series. Don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't have had that same magnitude.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was like, yeah, the WBC had all eyes on it, especially helped that there was no March Madness that night.
Yeah, and it was also on FS1. Like it wasn't even on a mainstream
Yeah, no,
channel.
right. Yeah, it wasn't nationally broadcasted on the on the regular Fox. So yeah, it was on a smaller channel. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if they change that for next WBC, seeing the reaction to this one.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of the same players will be returning.
As long as they're still in their prime come 2026.
Like, yeah, Ohtani will be 30 at that point, I think.
Yeah.
Or
Something like that.
30 or 31. I know.
Mike Trout will be like 35,
Yeah.
34, 35. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it depends. Maybe instead of
That Dominican
instead of Cedric Mullins, so like actually Corbin Carroll.
Yeah, right. Who could be better by that point.
Yeah.
But like, that Dominican Republic team could be in great shape with J-Rod, Rafael Devers, and Juan Soto. I think
Juan Soto will only be 18 by the time the next WBC rolls around.
Yeah.
Which is going to be great.
But I mean, all of them will still be younger than 30. I know Devers.
I think actually Soto's going to be what, like 27?
Well, he's 24 now.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would be 27.
That's crazy.
Devers would be 29 after even after like having 10 years of major league time.
Yep. That's true.
But yeah, that's the that's the one thing that kind of got lost is that DR team didn't make it out of the first round. Not that it's mind-blowing considering their competition, but it was pretty crazy to see that team not make it out. You would have expected that team in the final. But yeah, it would have been nice to see that team play more games.
For sure.
But
alas.
Anything more on the WBC?
No, I think we got it all covered. It was sick. It had the perfect ending.
Yeah.
The games just kept getting better and better.
Yeah.
Like the entire tournament was like great game, like instant classic after instant classic after instant classic. Like another tweet that I had was like, I think the games got so good that everyone just forgot there was a combined perfect game at one point.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, Foolish Baseball had a good tweet where it was like, the MLB should consider hiring the WBC writers.
Script writers, yeah.
It does help though that all the games are single elimination.
Yeah.
Like
It's also, I think there's so much beauty in, like, the fact that after it ends, we know we're just getting more baseball. Because during the World Series, there's always that underlying feeling of, oh, man, after this, it's over, and we don't get baseball for 6 months, and we got the cold months. We got, like, the days that it gets dark really early.
Yeah.
Like, that just sucks. But in March, it was like, we're just getting started. It's like we just had this amazing game, and we'd have 162 games to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus
yeah.
playoffs.
It's the great. It's like if you go to a concert with like 6 different artists, and one of your favorite artists is like the first one.
Yeah.
Like it would be like that. Opening day is something we always get excited for.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the regular season won't be at that level, but the consistency of having games to watch all the time is gonna be lovely, and that's why we love watching the MLB season. All right, shall we get into
some Manfred League baseball?
some Manfred League baseball? Yeah.
Let's do it.
Every year, this is our 4th time now. We do full standings predictions, as well as award predictions, and we sort of kind of have a World Series winner at the end, even though, like,
There's no reason to predict the World Series now.
yeah, it is, because predicting playoffs is a lot different than predicting standings. I have a little hypothetical playoff bracket set. However, there's a lot more riding into the postseason that you just can't predict. So take my full standings predictions into consideration a lot more than my playoff predictions, because that's just things go haywire, as you saw last year. I mean, I think only one home team, one like host of the LDS moved on last year. Like,
Yep.
Weird stuff can happen, so who knows? All right, so do we want to go American League East to West and the National League East to West?
Let's do it.
All right, so what do you got in the American League East?
So for my standings, I have first of all, I have the Orioles finishing in 5th. I'm very unimpressed with what the Orioles did this offseason. Really, they only got Adam Frazier, Cole Irvin, and Kyle Gibson.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's kind of it. They will have Gunnar Henderson coming up. They will hopefully have Grayson Rodriguez coming up, and a lot of internal options. But I feel like there's a lot to be desired with this team. I know that they did go on that great run last year, but their offseason really made me question what to actually think of this team. So I have the Orioles in 5th.
Yep.
Do you want to go next? Do we want to alternate this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we could do that. In 5th, I also have the Orioles.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to be the best last place team in
For
our
sure.
hypothetical world.
Whoever finishes last in the AL East will probably be the best last place team,
Yes.
as they were last year.
And I will say, yeah, there's a lot to be excited with the Orioles. However, yeah, I have a lot of concern with that starting rotation. And last year, I think they were 9th in bullpen ERA. Based on what they have on paper and also what they did peripherally, I don't know if I can necessarily rely on that for next year. If I can rely on that bullpen being as good as it was. So the pitching staff, I just have my doubts. I also, nonetheless, I expect good years from Mullins, Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Anthony Santander, but the roster needs a little bit more for me to consider them up there with the Red Sox, Rays, Yankees, and Blue Jays. But
I wish this was the offseason where they went and spent, especially because next offseason looks very underwhelming as far as the free agent market goes. It's really Shohei Ohtani and then a big drop-off, and I don't think the Orioles are getting Shohei Ohtani, believe it or not.
yeah,
This was the offseason where they should have spent on somebody.
yeah,
I think they really could have capitalized on Carlos Correa with those couple fallouts. They could have given him an 8-year deal.
Right.
They didn't do that though, and I wish they did. I wish they picked a guy to build around.
Yeah, because
That was from an external source.
because they're not even putting Henderson at shortstop right now. I think they're going to have him
They're
at
putting
third.
him at third. Yeah,
Uh,
putting Jorge Mateo. Which, to be fair, I think Jorge Mateo can be a very good breakout
Yeah,
candidate. But
But Mateo has the defense and the base running, but
Mhm.
Correa has the defense along with great hitting,
yeah,
which Mateo doesn't have. But yeah, like but what I will say about the Orioles is I feel like they have the most some of the most fluctuation.
yes.
Where like I could see them winning 88 games, but I could also see them winning 75 games.
hmm
What do you got for fourth place?
In fourth place, I have the Boston Red Sox. I think this team at peak can be interesting. They got a lot of lineup pieces that can be compelling, rotation pieces as well. But ultimately, I just think there's too much that needs to go right for this team to compete for a playoff spot. There's a lot of questions with the rotation depth, with the health of the team. That's kind of what led to their downfall last year. The bullpen, can we expect the same from John Schreiber? And if we can, who else is going to step up other than maybe Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen? But I don't know. There's just way too many question marks on this team, and like I said, I think there's way too much that needs to go right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I have the Red Sox in fourth as well. It's funny because in my notes I'm more justifying them being above the Orioles than being below
Yeah,
the Rays, Blue Jays, and Yankees.
me as well.
So you could make a good case for the Red Sox potentially being a last place team in this particular division. But what I put down is despite Bogarts, Evaldi, and Martinez losses, the additions of Yoshida, Jansen, Martin, Blyer, Duvall, Kluber should put the Red Sox in an okay place. I'm this is the most optimistic I've been about a Red Sox bullpen in a really long time. However, it's like the least optimistic I've been about a Red Sox lineup in a good while too. A lot of question marks with, Yoshida was their big offensive signing, but we haven't seen him at an MLB level quite yet. Also, Chris Sale, we could consider him a possible addition because he should be pitching more than 5 2/3 innings this year. And I expect more general health from the Red Sox. That was a big thing that led them to being a last place team last year was poor health. And also Tristan Casas should be an upgrade at first base over Bobby Dahlbeck, although that could be potentially a platoon situation. I don't know how they're going to sort it out.
I hope not.
What do you got for third place?
In third place, I have the Tampa Bay Rays. I think this team has potential to be better than third. I know that they also had a lot of injury problems last year with Wander Franco, with Tyler Glasnow, and Tyler Glasnow is going back on the injured list, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I need to see. I think I'm just believing the other two teams more. I don't really have an explanation as to why I don't believe in the Rays. I think they can be fine. I think they need some guys to step up, though. We need a Brandon Lau to have a resurgence type season because he had a down year last year. We need Wander Franco to stay healthy. I think the rotation looks very good, and the bullpen we know is, perennially very good, regardless of who's out there. There will be another MLB The Show created player that goes out and records like a 2.74 FIP over 68 innings.
Yep.
I don't know. The lineup regressed in power last year, and they're losing G-Man Choi, who is one of their best power hitters. And that's kind of my biggest concern in this team.
Right. Yeah, that's a justified thought. So far we're matching. I have the Rays in third, but despite having them as third, I see some solid improvement for the Rays this year. I expect more than 86 wins. They were another team plagued by injuries last year. With Wander Franco, even if he was playing, I think there was probably some lingering injury going on. Hopefully that's resolved by now. Brandon Lau, same thing. Had some injuries, and when he was playing, it just didn't seem right. He had a sub 700 OPS, which you shouldn't really expect from Brandon Lau. They were plagued by injuries. You got to love the rotation coming into this, especially when Glasnow potentially comes back. I know he's got an oblique issue, which isn't great, but it's better than an arm issue. hypothetically. So that's the silver lining, I guess. With Glass now, with McClanahan heading the rotation, you also have Glass now when he comes back. Jeffrey Springs, Drew Rasmussen,
Zach
and
Eflin.
Zach Eflin, that's a great addition as well.
Mhm.
So I really like that rotation. Bullpen looks pretty solid, although maybe it's not necessarily the stable that it was in like 2020. I still think it's pretty solid and a pretty good top four in that lineup with Yandy Diaz, Wander Franco, Randy Arozarena, and Brandon Lau. And I'm kind of banking on bounce back seasons from Franco and Lau. Um, and yeah, so although I have them third in the division again, I just think the Yankees and Blue Jays are so talent stacked that they're going to be above the Rays. But I still see some improvement from the Rays, so don't take that third place seeding as me being like, oh, they're going to be an 86 win team again. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Who do you have second place?
At second place, I have the New York Yankees. This team won 99 games last year, but they were also 35-35 in the second half. The offense kind of, other than Aaron Judge, who literally went away. I actually looked this up yesterday. In the second half, Aaron Judge had 6.6 Fangraphs wins above replacement, and the rest of the offense had 6.5.
Wow.
He accounted for more than double the team's F4, or
That
more
is-
than half the team's F4.
That's crazy.
I worry about this team, because I think they're relying a lot on younger players that don't have a lot of major league experience to really step up, like Volpe and Peraza and Cabrera. And I think they absolutely can, but I think they're putting a lot of reliance on them, especially because the guys that they're replacing are like Josh Donaldson, Aaron Hicks, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who are, they might already be, the three of them might already be upgrades over those three. Giancarlo Stanton really struggled in the second half last year, and I'm wondering if this is where we start to see the age decline of Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
I think once that power goes, you're really not getting anything back. And it was still kind of there last year. He had a decent ISO in the second half, but he only hit 151, and his walk rate declined. So I am worried about how much longevity we can see out of Giancarlo Stanton. Same thing goes for Anthony Rizzo. Do we see the, he did rely on the short porch a lot last year, and I'm sure he can do that again this year, but how much is it going to carry him? Gleyber Torres, I think, he was my player to watch. He needs to keep the exit velocity and keep relying on the short porch. And then there's the injury problems in the rotation right now. As of right now, Carlos Rodon, Luis Severino, and Frankie Montas will start the season on the IL. Severino's only supposed to miss one start. Rodon's out till May, but Montas is out for maybe the entire season.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of question marks for this team. I'm going to have them in, and I don't think Aaron Judge is going to be that good again. I'm sorry, but I don't
Right.
think he's going to be that good. They're going to need a lot more guys to step up, more than just Aaron Judge. So I'm putting the Yankees in second for right now.
Yeah, right. And yeah, the Stanton thing is interesting because he had like similar exit velocities as he did, but his sweet spot percentage shot down. So I'm wondering if he's going to work on that and potentially try to put the ball in the right direction because he's hitting it hard, but it's weird, hitting it's a hard thing to do. So yeah, we're still matching. I thought at this point we were going to break off because the Yankees are are kind of an overwhelming AL East favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what they did last year with 99 wins, it kind of makes sense that they are the favorite. But with a lot of these standings, I'm thinking about, the Yankees did slightly overperform last year. The Blue Jays did slightly maybe underperform last year. So that's kind of what I'm considering. The Yankees I have in second place. What I will say, they're a great team. I love the addition of Carlos Rodon, especially when he comes back. That's a guy who can put up 4 or 5 wins above replacement, even with the missed month. I really love their bullpen with Holmes, Peralta, King sort of heading that, and you also have supplemental guys like Marinaccio and Loaizaga. You certainly remember how good Loaizaga was just 2 years ago, and Marinaccio was my player to watch from the Yankees. So what I'll say about the Yankees is they have more players due for regression than the Blue Jays do. So like Aaron Judge, for example, he could put up an MVP caliber season and still be 3 wins worth 3 wins less than he was last year. He put up 11 F WAR. He put up 11
.4
F WAR last year with the Yankees, which is just unbelievable historic season. So he could still have an MVP caliber season and be a decent amount worse than he was last year. It's hard to imagine him being that good, and I totally agree with you. He's not going to be that good, and if he is, I mean, hats off to him for sure.
Yeah.
It also would be surprising to see someone like Nestor Cortez put up a sub 2.5 ERA again.
Mm-hmm.
I expect good things, but I don't expect something that good.
I'm also just very concerned about how they finished off last season and if that's a precursor to what's to come.
Yeah. That whole thing is sort of weird. I'd also say it would be semi-surprising to see Rizzo put up a 130 OPS plus again.
Yeah.
Especially he's getting a little bit older, so we'll see how he utilizes that short porch again. And the only players I'd expect a little bit of progression from would be like Garrett Cole a little bit, Giancarlo Stanton maybe if he puts the ball in the right direction, and Gleyber Torres, as you mentioned, as your player to watch. So.
Volpe is going to be on the opening day roster. They announced that yesterday. That's definitely a step in the right direction for this team.
Yeah.
I'd say if they have Volpe at short, Peraza at third, and Cabrera in left, that's a good lineup for opening day.
Yeah.
Especially when you're benching Stanton, Hicks, and IKF.
Right.
For those three.
Yep.
You want to get those guys as much experience as possible right now because those are the long-term answers, even if it means sacrificing a couple wins in April 2023.
Very true. So what do you got on the Blue Jays as your AL East champions?
Yeah, so I have the Blue Jays as the AL East champions. I think this is just the most complete team right now from top to bottom. I think the only maybe question mark is the bullpen just because they don't have enough, they don't have the guy. Jordan Romano's very good, but I don't know. Would you consider him a top 10 reliever? I probably wouldn't. That's probably my only nitpick. But other than that, I think the rotation has a lot of good options with Manoah, with Gausman, with Chris Bassett as an addition. I know I'm expecting a Barrios bounce back. Even if he's not, what he used to be with the Twins, I don't think he's going to be what he was last year. I'm expecting Vlad Guerrero Jr. to raise his fly ball rate a little bit. I hope he has a ground ball rate below 50% as he did. I mean, he had a 45% in 2021 and he slugged over 600.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to, I'm going to be honest, I think it's hard to imagine we're ever going to see a better season out of Vlad Jr. than we did in 2021, at least offensively. But I'm expecting at least something in the middle of what we saw out of the two seasons, the two previous years. We need him to lift the ball more. That's probably the biggest X factor. I hate that term, but I think that's the biggest X factor in the Blue Jays season. Other than that, their lineup has guys like Alejandro Kirk. They have Matt Chapman. They have Bo Bichette. They have the addition of Dalton Varsho, which I'm very excited about, especially because they have the new dimensions coming into their ballpark in right field, and Varsho pulls the ball more than half the time, and he's a big fly ball hitter, so I think he's going to take that to his advantage, certainly. And that's kind of most of what I have on the Blue Jays.
Yeah. I have the Blue Jays winning the AL East as well. So my justification on that is, I think they had a lot of players that did well, but also had breakout potential that didn't necessarily break out. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a big example of that. I also think Bo Bichette could potentially break out further than he did last year. He was kind of, coasting along up until September of last year when he really broke out. Kevin Gausman, his ERA could go down a good bit considering his strikeout to walk numbers last year. And George Springer, I know he's a little bit on the older side, but he's a guy that has put up consistently like 140, 150 OPS plus seasons. There's potential for him to get back to that. I wouldn't guarantee it necessarily, but there's potential there. The only overperformers last year with the Blue Jays were kind of like Alek Manoah, Ross Stripling, and I don't know, you could possibly say Alejandro Kirk, but I see that as somewhat sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
I really love, as you mentioned, I really love the Dalton Varsho addition. I think that'll be really good. It's an upgrade in left field over Lourdes Gurriel Jr.
Yeah.
offensively they're around the same, and defensively they're much different. They're total flip flop.
Not only that, but it's good for them to have another left-handed hitter, especially replacing with a right-handed
Yeah,
hitter. They did lose Teoscar Hernandez, but they got Eric Swanson in that trade.
yeah. That trade I think was good for both sides because they both
Mhm.
got something that was very necessary for them and lost something that wasn't as necessary.
Mhm.
So yeah, that Swanson addition I like to complement Jordan Romano and Yimi Garcia on the back end of that bullpen.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously it would be hard to imagine Jose Barrios being as bad as he was last year. He gave up like the most home runs and had a 5.23 ERA. Given his stuff and his reputation prior to that season, I imagine his ERA would be a good amount lower than it was last year. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have the Blue Jays. So yeah, we have the same standings in the AL East: Blue Jays, Yankees, Rays, Red Sox, Orioles. I'll start the AL Central, where in the cellar I got the Tigers. So out of this division, I will say I think the hardest to predict for me is the Tigers and the White Sox because like the Tigers had so many down years last year, so you
Mhm.
don't know how many of those guys are going to stay how they were and how many guys are going to break out necessarily because like Spencer Torkelson is an example of that. Is he going to continue to be a pretty much all around negative, or is he going to really ramp up and show us why he was a top 5 prospect in baseball? Javi Baez, is he going to bounce back? Eduardo Rodriguez, in a potential full season, is he going to show why they signed him to a 5-year contract? I don't know, but there's a lot of question marks. But last year, the Tigers had a 63-99 Pythagorean win loss on top of their 66 and 96 regular win loss. They had an 84 OPS plus and a 94 ERA plus. They had a good bullpen last year. That was like one of their only strong spots. However, they lost Gregory Soto, Joe Jimenez, and Andrew Chafin, which kind of made up that bullpen. So they lost a lot of their bullpen. The only piece that was sort of good last year. They also have Mize and Skubal on the IL right now. Although they are bringing back Spencer Turnbull, who got Tommy John in the middle of 2021. So, and he was doing really well before that Tommy John surgery. So he could possibly add to that. But yeah, that's what I have on the Tigers. Is they were not strong really in any way except the bullpen last year, and the bullpen they lost a lot of last year. So they're going to have to rely on a lot of bounce back seasons in order to get out of that get out of that bottom of the division. Who do you
Sure.
got in last place?
So this is actually where we break off. I have the Kansas City Royals finishing last. This team looked very interesting last year. They had a lot of new guys come up and make an impact, whether it be Bobby Witt Jr., whether it be Vinny Pasquantino, MJ Melendez, Nick Prado. Brady Singer broke out last year. But my fear with the Royals is that that's kind of it. I mean, they don't really have anyone else coming up anytime soon that's going to add to that core. And they're not going to, I don't think they're going to be in a position this year where they are going to spend on anyone. I think at the trade deadline, they're sellers. They give away guys such as Scott Barlow. They give away guys maybe like Brad Keller, maybe Hunter Dozier. I really am concerned with the lack of identity on this team right now. I don't see them getting much better other than breakouts from Bobby Witt Jr., breakouts from MJ Melendez, guys that we need to see more out of. And I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at on the Royals.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some glaring holes with the Kansas City Royals, and I'll talk about the Royals for my 4th place team, where I have them. You mentioned that they don't really have anybody left in that core, but or that's coming up out of that system. But also, I think it's good to remember that like a lot of these guys are having full seasons for the first time, and also I imagine there's going to be a lot of progression from rookie year to second year in the league. Bobby Witt Jr. He had a good rookie year but he was also like a mid 700s OPS guy. I expect that OPS to rise a good bit. He was he was also a 20-30 player last year. There's potential. Maybe he's a 30-40 player. Like that's a really high talent. I expect progression from Witt. I expect progression from Melendez as well. I expect a full season out of Vinny Pasquantino should also add a good bit. But also, yeah, pitching is a glaring hole in that. From both the bullpen and the starting rotation, glaring hole. So that's why I can't have them above fourth. But I expect more wins in general from the Royals this year than they had last year, which was they had 65 wins last year. So I could see that get into the 70s this year, and them finishing fourth in the AL Central.
Sure. So this is, once again, I have the Detroit Tigers, of course, finishing fourth. You mentioned there were a lot of down years last year, and I'm expecting a lot of resurgences. Like the Blue Jays, they're also adjusting their ballpark dimensions to become more hitter-friendly. A lot of those, they're particularly doing center field and right field, and they have a lot of left-handed hitters that I think could benefit from that. Between Akil Baddoo, between Riley Green, between Austin Meadows, and between Kerry Carpenter, I think there are a lot of guys that will have much better years. Not to mention, I think Javi Baez in his second year in Detroit will be better. I think for him, he obviously had a very bad down year last year, and I think a lot of that was due to just the first year being in a new city on a free agent contract. I think Javier Baez will be, at the very least, an above-average bat this year.
Yeah.
According to OPS Plus, he was well below that last year. It's the twilight year for Miguel Cabrera. He's going to be retiring after this year, so there will be a lot to celebrate there. And I think he'll go out not the same way that Albert Pujols did last year, but I think he'll go out with one of his better years. So I have the Tigers, and on the pitching staff, I think Eduardo Rodriguez is due for a resurgence here. I expect Joey Wentz to take steps forward in the rotation. I expect Spencer Turnbull to come back strong. I think Matt Manning has the potential to take a couple steps forward, and that's kind of what I got on the Tigers.
Yeah. The Tigers, I think there's a lot of potential for fluctuation there too.
Mm-hmm.
I could see them winning 60 games. I could see them winning 78, 80 games.
Yeah.
Depending on, did Austin Meadows end up not hitting a home run last year?
Yes.
So, I would be surprised if that happened again for sure. But yeah, they're an interesting team. It'll be interesting to see what they do. So in third place, I have the Minnesota Twins. They just kind of bore me, really. Outside of Carlos Correa for sure, and they have some talent, like they have Correa and Buxton and whatnot. But outside of that, I don't know. They just kind of bore me. So last season, what I'll say is they were 11th in OPS, 20th in starter ERA, 16th in bullpen ERA, 17th in defensive runs above average. That sounds like a third place team to me in the AL Central, and they were also 29th in BSR, which it plays some of a role, but not a crazy amount. That's the base running stat, if you were unaware. So they were middle of the pack in most categories, and there's nothing to suggest to me that it won't be really any different this year. So I guess they did add Pablo Lopez, but they lost Luis Ariz. That was a trade. They signed Carlos Correa in the offseason, but they had him last year, so we already kind of know what that team looks like with Carlos Correa. So yeah, there's not really much to say that they'll be different. Not much to say that they'll be worse this year, but not much to say that they'll be better this year.
I agree. I also have the Twins in third. This lineup is not as deep to me as it used to be. I mean, you look at the bottom four in the lineup, it's Trevor Larnach, it's Christian Vazquez, Nick Gordon, and Michael A. Taylor. That's not something that really moves me. They do have a very solid top five with, Joey Gallo, who's a question mark, with Carlos Correa, with Byron Buxton, who will be very good, but, the question's on if he can stay healthy.
Yep.
Max Kepler, can we expect a resurgence year from him? And then Jose Miranda, can he replicate the success that he had last year? So even the guys that they have, there are still a lot of question marks. The only guys that you can really expect everything out of is Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton when he's healthy, but we
Yeah.
don't know if and when he's going to be healthy. That's my biggest concern with the Twins is the depth in their lineup, but I do think the rotation is going to take steps forward this year. They kind of have a full rotation, assuming that everyone stays healthy, with Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Tyler Mahle, and Kenta Maeda, and then Bailey Ober for depth. I think they have a strong bullpen headed by Caleb Thalbar, Yohan Duran, and Jorge Lopez. So I think there's a lot to be excited about there. But ultimately, I think there are question marks.
Yeah, for sure. Like, a good amount of what ifs with Kepler. He can, without the shift, he can kind of break out, and his strikeout rate and pop up rate went down a lot. That's why he was a player to watch. But we don't know. We haven't. You got to see it to believe it.
Exactly.
When you're doing this type of stuff. All right. So in second place, I have the Guardians. Now, what I'll say about this is, it's not necessarily about why I have them in second. It's not about Guardians regression. I think it's more about White Sox potential progression.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm still like, the White Sox are one of the hardest teams to predict here in my mind. So with the Guardians, the team, they didn't change much, which is sort of good. They didn't really lose anybody, which, that's always a thing with Cleveland. They trade a lot of guys, but they didn't really do any of that this year. And I still think there's a strong chance they repeat as AL Central champions. I love their bullpen. I love their base running. I love their defense. And I don't know if that will really change. They had I think their team OPS plus was like 102 last year. I don't think that'll really change, but their base running sort of supplements that and makes them a pretty good offense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they get on base more than the average team as well. But yeah, I think what I'll talk about, why I put them second, will be more about what I talk about with the White Sox. Who do you got in second place?
I actually have the Chicago White Sox in second, so we
Yep.
do have a couple of discrepancies in this division. I think the rotation is kind of top heavy. We know Dylan Cease is great. We're expecting bounce back years from Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito, but we're not really sure.
Yeah.
Michael Kopech was good for some time last year, but then he kind of fell off. He is my player to watch, but he still certainly is a question mark. And then there's Mike Clevenger, who's, well, whatever.
Yeah.
But the lineup, I think, is very good, and there's a lot of bounce back potential. Luis Robert was very hurt for many portions of last year. Eloy Jimenez, if he can stay healthy, we know what to expect out of him. A lot of power, but kind of average with batting average and on base type stuff. We need to have a Yasmani Grandal breakout as well, or at least a resurgence, because that was pretty bad last year. His 2021 season will forever be an anomaly. There's no way that will ever be repeated. But we need something in the middle.
Yeah.
And then it's all about, can this team hit for more power? Because they had one of the lowest ISOs last year, and that was a big reason why they regressed as a whole team. So I'm expecting guys like Robert, like Jimenez, like Grandal to be able to pick up where they left off in previous years with their power. But if that doesn't happen, especially with all three, I don't see this team beating the Guardians in the standings.
Yeah. So with the White Sox, with all of these, you have to look at what they have on the roster and whatnot. The White Sox, they lost Jose Abreu. They added Andrew Benintendi was their biggest addition.
Mm-hmm.
But we forgot about, I'm not saying we forgot about, but let's not forget about their biggest subtraction and their biggest addition, which were Tony La Russa and Pedro Grifol.
Yep.
I think
that's kind of why I put them over the Twins.
My prediction for the White Sox revolves a lot around, individual bounce back season from the players, as much as Pedro Grifol being the manager. I don't know if he's going to be a great manager, but I think he's a major upgrade over what they previously had in Tony La Russa. And I watched some film to support this take, and one of the quotes from Pedro Grifol said, I want everybody to go out there and be who they are,
which is like perfect.
which is
Yeah.
the opposite of what
show
they
that
had.
show that to Yermin Mercedes.
Yeah, come back, man. Post a 1,000 OPS in April again.
Unretire, please.
Yes, please. So I'm expecting a culture change, and I expect that really talented roster that they have to play a little bit better under Pedro Grifol. I'll learn to pronounce his name at some point. But also, just last year, like in order for the White Sox to win 81 games last year, everything had to have gone wrong, and just about everything
Yeah.
did go wrong. Outside of Dylan Cease having the spectacular season that he did, we should not expect a 570 OPS from Yasmani Grandal. We should not expect a 4.90 ERA from Lucas Giolito, and we should not expect a 6.26 OPS from Yoan Moncada. And also, I think the team generally will just play better under new management, and hopefully Grifol will put just the players in general better positions than La Russa did.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I have with the White Sox. It's more of a feeling pick than just statistically justifying them. So it's a large large feeling pick for me. So tell me why the Guardians are going to be in with the AL Central champions.
Yeah, I mean, the Guardians, we saw it last year out of them. They found ways to win. I think they're a team that could benefit from the shift ban.
True.
Because they are kind of a team that plays on the ground. They hit a little more towards the ground, and they have a lot of speed. If guys like Ahmed Rosario, guys like Steven Kwan, guys like Andres Jimenez are going to benefit more from hitting ground balls, that's going to pay some dividends for them. I'm also expecting a lot of upgrades in the rotation. I'm expecting a lot out of Tristan McKenzie to take steps forward and become one of the premier pitchers in baseball this year. Shane Bieber, we know what to expect out of him. The rotation, the depth has some little questions. How much do we expect out of guys like Aaron Savale, Cal Quantrill, Zach Plesac? But you know what? I think there are other reinforcements coming. They have prospects like Tanner Beebe in the system that are coming up. They have Logan Allen coming up, Gavin Williams. All these guys are top 100 prospects that are starting the year in AAA. I think we could see some of those guys move into the rotation at some point during the season and make a difference down the stretch. I think this team is very complete. The bullpen goes without saying. Emmanuel Clase is the best reliever in the league this year with the subtraction of Edwin Diaz. Trevor Stephan and James Karinchak looked good at points last year. Eli Morgan looked good. Eniel De Los Santos looked good. Nick Sandlin is a guy that they can expect a decent amount out of. I think this team, they're just going to step up when they need to. Jose Ramirez is going to lead the pack once again and get 7th place in the MVP voting with one third-place vote from a Cleveland writer. But I expect this team to repeat as champions.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the good all the points of why the Guardians are good and why they'll stay good. I think they'll be very competitive for sure. And even with the drop off after Bieber and McKenzie, like the Guardians have good enough of a defense where guys like Quantrill can go out there and only get 6 strikeouts per 9 and still be all right.
Yeah.
Because that defense is as good as they are. They're one of the most athletic teams in the league. The Guardians are. All right. So who do you have? So now we start the AL West. Who do you have in the cellar?
You'll never believe this, but I have the Oakland Athletics in the cellar. There's really not much to say, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I kind of thought about this today. So the Braves released their City Connect uniforms, and they announced the teams that will be getting them this year, and it's the Braves, the Rangers, the Mariners, the Orioles, the Reds, the Pirates. So there's 10 teams that will still need them in 2024 and beyond, and the A's are one of them. And I just realized, I'm so ready for the A's to release their City Connect uniforms, and then 2 days later, it's officially announced that they're going to Las Vegas. It's this is our city, Las Vegas. Here we come.
Yeah, that's what we have to look forward to.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great moment. I think they have some guys to watch for. Seth Brown broke out last year and was very comparable to his predecessor at first base and Matt Olson.
Yeah.
They made additions like Aledmys Diaz, Jesus Aguilar, guys that could eat up some plate appearances and be maybe league average bats.
Yeah.
Shea Langlers is my player to watch. I'm hoping he takes a step forward. Kyle Muller is starting for them on opening day. I wish they went with Shintaro Fujinami, but oh well. We could have had Shohei versus him on opening day, and that would have been cool.
True.
And I think he's probably the best pitcher in this rotation right now, given experience. I don't know. There is not much to look forward to with this team, unfortunately, and they happen to be in a very strong division with 4 other teams that are looking to compete. So, yeah, I have the Oakland A's in the cellar.
Yeah, I don't have very many notes on the A's as I have them in last place as well. This is a team that went 60 and 102 last year. They traded their best pitcher at the trade deadline last year. They traded their best player to the Braves.
Yeah.
So they were one of the worst teams, and they traded all their best assets, which I guess is what you should do. But for 2023, they will really they're going to be competing in that lottery for sure. Potentially worst team in baseball. Them and the Nationals will have a little competition. Who do you have in fourth place?
In fourth place, I have the Texas Rangers. I know this is a team that a lot of people expect to be better this year, because they had a really bad record with one-run games. They have the 2 guys that are going to benefit the most from the shift ban, and they made a ton of upgrades in the rotation. But just based on the rest of the division, I have this team. Someone has to finish fourth, and this is where I have them. The rotation, even if it's good, it has a lot of question marks. DeGrom is obviously, that kind of goes without saying, he's the best pitcher in the league, but how much can we expect out of him when he's healthy?
Yeah.
Nathan Eovaldi had some major aggression from last year, which, to be fair, his 2021 was going to be hard to replicate regardless, but, there certainly is some question marks with him. Martin Perez, he is, 30? He's 32 now. He's not that old, but he's not certainly a guy that you can pencil in for anything, even though he was very reliable last year.
Yeah.
John Gray and Andrew Heaney. Gray was hurt last year, but I think he can be solid. Heaney, we've seen the ups and downs, and there's like a 83-page essay to be written on if he's good or not. The bullpen really doesn't look any better than it was last year. Fangraphs has Jose Leclerc as the closer. I think they should upgrade your player to watch, Brock Burke, to be that. Dane Dunning, I think, could be interesting out of the bullpen because he had some very good ground ball numbers last year. But other than that, this team also has a lot that needs to go right. Their lineup, you have Simeon, you have Seager, you have Lowe, you have Adolis Garcia. Josh Jung could break out. He's their top prospect. But after that, there's a lot of question marks. How much do we expect out of guys like Robbie Grossman, Brad Miller, Bubba Thompson? Can we expect Mitch Garver to resurge? Ezekiel Duran, does he play a bigger role? There are a lot of question marks with this team, so that's why I have them finishing in fourth.
In fourth place, I think this has just sort of become my job on the show is to hate on the Angels a little bit. So I have the Angels in fourth, and it's not it's not even about who they have on their team. It's more just them being the Angels and also
it's principle
and them being managed by Phil Nevin.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start off by saying with the Angels, I like the Tyler Anderson and Hunter Renfroe additions. Rendon coming off the IL and potentially, he granted he's been unhealthy the past few years, but that was a wrist issue and they did surgery on his wrist. So hypothetically, you could figure, maybe that situation's sort of handled by now. But who necessarily knows with that? I'm no sports doctor. Obviously, gotta love Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. But what I will say with them is we saw them both do really well last year,
mm-hmm.
and they won 73 games, which isn't how much better are they going to do to push them past that? However, I guess you do have the additions, but and I like that rotation. I think they were top 5 in the AL in starter ERA last year. I just don't believe in Phil Nevin. Management wise, the Angels, their past 3 have been Brad Osmus, Joe Madden, and Phil Nevin, and that doesn't really inspire. I know Joe Madden is a World Series winner, but I think
he didn't deserve that, man.
He
did everything he could to lose that game.
His management has kind of become a little bit outdated. And Brad Osmus before that wasn't the answer, and Phil Nevin I think is also not the answer. The Angels need to find their guy, and hopefully they do it after this year because I just don't believe in this team to improve that much, given who's managing them. And I don't know. The Angels just typically underwhelm us in general, so I have them in fourth.
I will. I will say. Would you have anything else to say?
No, take it
Okay.
away.
I agree with your Phil Nevin take. I think that there's a lot to be desired at the manager position. Phil Nevin is not someone that I think a lot of guys are running through a wall for. But I do have the Angels finishing third because they're going to be fielding a real team this year as long as everyone stays healthy. And I'm
Yeah.
going to run under the assumption that they do. 55% of the team's plate appearances last year came from guys with an OPS plus below 90. I'm not expecting that to repeat itself this year. They have upgrades like, Taylor Ward, I think, is going to do fine again this year. Is he going to repeat his 2022? Maybe not, but I still think he's going to be a very good bat at the top of that lineup. Trout and Ohtani need no explanation. Right now, I'm running under the assumption that Rendon at least plays 120 games. Let's put it. I'm not going to say he stays healthy, but I'm going to say he plays enough games to qualify for the batting title. And we know what he's capable of when he's healthy. We saw him do very well in 2020, the last quote unquote full year that he was healthy.
He was doing pretty well before his injury last year too.
They have Brandon Drury, Hunter Renfroe, and Logan O'Hoppe joining the lineup this year. I'm expecting all three of those guys to make a large impact on the offense and even on defense as well. Their bench depth has actually some guys like Luis Rengifo was above average as a bat last year. Gio Urshela is a pretty decent player, especially on defense. And let's talk about the rotation. I think the rotation, you could argue, is top 5 in the AL right now. I think it's top 5 in the major leagues right now. If we're talking opening day rotation, Shohei Ohtani needs no explanation. Patrick Sandoval is a guy that shined for Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic, and I think that he makes some strides this year. Tyler Anderson got Cy Young votes last year. Reed Detmers was one of the best pitchers down the stretch last year. He had some very good numbers from August on. He also threw a no-hitter, and it was like his 10th best start last year. Jose Suarez is another guy that I think is very underrated. As a 5-starter, I think he could put up an ERA in the high 3s, and that's very good out of the guy you least expect. Their bullpen is very questionable, sure, but I think the rest of this team looks very good and good enough to finish third in this division.
Yeah, Ohtani, Sandoval, and Anderson that you mentioned, all sub-3 ERAs last year. So yeah, there's some things I'll knock on the Angels, but the rotation is not going to be one of them. There's a lot of upside with the Angels. And my thing with them is a more feeling thing and not necessarily an analysis thing. I have the Rangers in third place. I think there's lots of upside with this team. Obvious breakout potential with Corey Seager with the shift going away. I mean, I think they had him having 25 more hits or something like that. His expected WOBA last year was like in the 370s, which would hypothetically put him at like a 900 something OPS, and that's as a shortstop. So I mean, obvious breakout potential with him, potential MVP candidate. If the shift thing goes the way we expect it to, we can't expect everything to change with the shift going away. There's obvious potential with the additions of Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, and even someone like Andrew Heaney. Also, not that I'm super run differential. I'm a super big run differential guy where I rely heavily on it. But Pythagorean win-loss did have them winning 9 more games last year, and even with the bullpen, like when I looked at the Fangraphs rankings, I expected much worse. But I think they were 12th in the majors in bullpen ERA last year, which did surprise me. And on paper they're not necessarily star-studded in the bullpen, but I think they're a little better than people think. So with the Rangers, I'm kind of relying on their upside with Simeon, Seager, deGrom, Eovaldi, even like Nathaniel Lowe kind of heading that roster and bolstering them to maybe being a potential 500 team. Granted, I don't have them as a playoff team, so I don't see them taking it. I don't see that squad taking them that far, but I do have them in third place. Who do you have in second place?
I have the Seattle Mariners finishing second, as I'm sure you do as well. This team won 90 games last year. They made it to the postseason for the first time since 2001. I'm expecting it's the first It's not the first full season of Julio Rodriguez, but I want to say it's the first full season because it took him a month or so to figure things out last year.
Right.
And then he was one of the best players in the game. So Julio Rodriguez is going to be expected to take somehow another step. They have additions like Teoscar Hernandez coming in. I think Jared Kelenic, this might be the year where he sort of figures it out and at least is an above-average bat. That's really all they're probably asking him to be. They made additions like, not Eugenio Suarez, AJ Pollock coming into the lineup this year. I'm expecting more out of Ty France because he was great in the first month last year and then he kind of fizzled out. But also then there's the rotation with Luis Castillo in his first full year with the Mariners, Logan Gilbert, Robbie Ray, Marco Gonzalez, George Kirby. A lot of very good talent there. And the bullpen looks just as good. Paul Sewald is going to continue in as closer for right now until Andres Munoz is better. And they're like, actually, wait a minute, we should put this guy as closer. They're putting Matt Brash in the bullpen for a full year, and he was fantastic as a reliever last year.
Yeah.
They have Diego Castillo. They have Penn Murphy. Everyone in the bullpen looks pretty good. If you're losing against this team in the sixth inning, it's going to be tough getting back into it. I expect a lot of this team this year, but they are in a division with Houston.
Yeah, that part is tough because the Mariners are a really good team and they didn't really subtract much either. And I really like this Seattle team. I have them in second place as well, but I'm kind of sort of going to glorify them here a little bit. I don't think the Angels and Rangers and I think you think is this as well. I don't think the Angels and Rangers are touching them to potentially take a wild card spot from them and whatnot. But the Mariners, I have them in second place. I love the whole pitching staff, starting pitching and bullpen. There's really not much holes there. Robbie Ray might be their number 4 objectively, which is a good sign. That's even though he had his struggles late in the year, that's a guy with a 3.71 ERA last year and over 10 strikeouts per 9. And also won a Cy Young 2 years ago. Let's not forget that. Colton Wong and Teoscar Hernandez, I really like his additions for them. I think those were pretty necessary for them. Wong is going to be an upgrade over Adam Frazier, and Hernandez is going to be a big addition to the outfield because they didn't really have much outfield power outside of Julio Rodriguez, or they don't have. Heading into the season, they didn't have much outfield power outside of Julio Rodriguez because they did lose Mitch Haniger and they did trade Jesse Winker. So adding Teoscar Hernandez to that, I think, is a solid addition. Why I say that they're below the Astros is, Mariners have great pitching and decent offense, while the Astros have great pitching, great offense, along with great defense too. So that's what has me putting the Astros above them. But I think that's it could have been implied without being said. Who do you have, or obviously, why do you have the Astros in first place?
The Astros go without saying at this point. They're the defending World Series champions, and they've honestly gone through so much to get there. I mean, they've lost George Springer, they've lost Carlos Correa, they've lost Dallas Keuchel, they've now lost Justin Verlander.
Garrett Cole.
They lost Garrett Cole, yeah. And as of right now, they've lost Justin Verlander, and for a couple months they've lost Jose Altuve. But they still have Jeremy Pena. They still have Kyle Tucker. They still have Alex Bregman. They still have Yordan Alvarez. And they gained Jose Abreu, and that's just in the lineup. In the rotation, they have Framber Valdez, who's one of the better starters in baseball. He's the ground god. They also have the Prince of Pop-Ups in Christian Javier, who's your guy. They have Jose Urquidy and Hunter Brown, who are looking to take steps up this year, Brown especially as a rookie. And they have Luis Garcia, the starting pitcher, who I think a lot of other people expect stuff out of this year. This team is very deep. They have it all still, even without Altuve for a couple months. And that's only going to make them better. There's really not much that needs to be explained with the Astros because we've all seen it for the last 6 years now.
Yeah, that rotation is so deep that, Luis Garcia was a guy who was a Game 2 starter just in 2021. And it's not like, granted, some of those performances didn't go great.
They have lost Verlander technically because he had Tommy John in 2021.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But he was a Game 2 starter, and then he just went to the bullpen in 2022, and it's not necessarily because he got a whole lot worse. It's just because they're that deep, especially with, Framber and Christian Javier performing how they have been or how they did last year. So, yeah, I have the Astros in first place as well. I have them as the first seed in the AL playoffs too. Best record in the AL. I predict. Not really expecting much regression from anyone. They're not really an old team. Jose Altuve is the whole Martin Maldonado is like the oldest guy, but Jose Altuve is the oldest real solid contributor, and I don't really expect too much regression from him. That rotation's really young and really good. That bullpen will remain really good. So yeah, I think it's pretty cut and clear why the Astros are a great team, and that's why I have them in first place in the AL West.
Yeah.
All right, so now we move on to the National League, where we will start out east, where we're technically in the East. I'll start with my last place pick. It will be the Washington Nationals. No surprises. Not gonna make any surprises here with this one. With the Nationals, there is some watch value with them, since it could be interesting to see Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, Keibert Ruiz, and CJ Abrams develop. At the major league level, those are guys that they got from significant trades. But all in all, this is a last place team, cut and dry, especially after the losses of Soto and Bell in the middle of last season. That doesn't help. They're not going into the season with any of them, so it's they don't really have any studs with this team, unless you could count Joey Meneses as one. But even that's a guy who had a good 2 months. So we'll see him develop, and he's 31 too. So he might be more of a trade target than he is than a future National. So who knows with them? Do you also have the Nationals in last?
I do indeed also have the Nationals in last. There's not really much to say that you didn't already say yourself. They have a lot of interesting pieces that they got from the trades. Obviously, it helps in a rebuild when you have absolute studs like Scherzer and Turner and Soto that you can trade because you'll get a lot of pieces in return, and that they did. Yeah, I don't know. This team just doesn't have a whole lot to inspire us other than that. It's kind of just a lot of guys that are filling spots, taking plate appearances. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
There's really not much that needs to be said.
Not much that needs to be said. In fourth place, I have the Miami Marlins. With the Marlins, it's the same thing as usual. Young, inspiring, developing rotation, awful offense, not enough done in the offseason to make me feel differently about them. That's really just about it. I don't think they really, although they did add Luis Ariz to the offense, they also lost Pablo Lopez as part of that pitching staff. And, granted, that pitching staff could potentially be deep with, Alcantara obviously heading it, and, Jesus Luzardo really developed well last year, and Trevor Rogers could bounce back, and also I think Sixto's coming back.
Maybe.
He could come back. Sixto Sanchez.
He's starting the year in AAA.
Yeah.
But he's going to be pitching. He's going to be throwing baseballs on a real mound.
So he could be coming back. And Esteury Ruiz, I think his ETA is...
Esteury Ruiz is on the A's.
Or no, not Esteury Ruiz. Who's that guy? Yuri Perez.
Yuri Perez, yes.
My bad.
He's going to be... He hasn't pitched above AA, so I'm not sure where they want to put him.
Yeah.
He's going to start in AAA, though. Yeah. But he's 19.
Yeah.
He's so young.
I don't know if he's expected to come up this year, but although they have a somewhat deep rotation, losing Lopez, even with the addition of Ariz, I think that's sort of it's sort of a neutral thing that just happened with the Marlins. So they didn't really add too much in the offseason. I expect similar things from the Marlins this year, which was the same thing as the year before, and mostly the year before that and the year before that. Do you also have the Marlins in fourth?
I do. I think there are a lot of guys in the... I do like the moves that they made. They just didn't make enough to really inspire me with the other teams in that division, especially with how the other teams got better. I like Luis Ariz as a good option for them at the leadoff spot. I think Jazz Chisholm, if he's good and healthy at the same time, will be excellent. They need bounce back years from Jorge Soler. They need one from Avisail Garcia. They need something better from Jacob Stallings. They have Gene Segura coming in this year. They have Brian De La Cruz, who we both like.
Yeah.
The rotation is very solid. I'm looking at a bounce back year from Trevor Rogers. I'm looking at a healthier year from Jesus Luzardo. I'm looking at more from Edward Cabrera. But yeah, I don't know. There just isn't a whole lot of depth to this team, especially on offense.
Yeah, Edward Cabrera is one I forgot to mention.
I do think this is a make or break year for management, like Kim Ng and such.
Oh yeah,
because
upper management.
Her additions did not do very well last year. And this year it's Gene Segura, it's Johnny Cueto, and AJ Puck as well, but that's really it.
Right. Yeah. And who do they even have like as the regular manager?
Chris Carpenter.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yep.
All right, so now we move on to the third place team, who I have the Phillies staying in third place. It's weird to say about a defending National League champion, but they also were a third place team last year. The Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins injuries are not going to help them. One bit of news that we figured we'd kind of meld into this segment was, Rhys Hoskins tore his ACL in spring training, trying to field the ball. That's very unfortunate. He's going to be out for the entire year. And what sucks for him is that this was a contract year. This was a year where he could have potentially separated himself and gotten a large contract after the end of this season. But that won't be happening, particularly with this offseason because he tore his ACL. Also, Bryce Harper, he got Tommy John surgery. He will be out for the first, I think, 3 months of the season. That's not going to help them. The Phillies offense kind of lives with Bryce Harper, so they're going to have to figure it out without him for the first 3 months. Also, Ranger Suarez has forearm tightness, which isn't a good sign for their rotation. Just long-term, not a good sign for them. Taijuan Walker is a question mark for me. With them adding him to the rotation, although he had a 3.49 ERA, his underlying numbers weren't quite there. So we'll see what he does. But I also have the Phillies I have them in my playoffs. Don't get me wrong. Because Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, JT Realmuto, and now Trey Turner should be going off like they always have been. I love the Trey Turner addition. I think it's going to add even more to that lineup. So it makes the Trey Turner being there, it softens the blow of Hoskins and Harper not being in that lineup. Harper specifically the first 3 months not being in that lineup. So although I've mentioned all those negative things, I do have them as a playoff team. It's just I don't see them progressing much in terms of their win total in the regular season because of the negative things that I just said. Who do you have in third place?
I also have the Phillies. This lineup looks very concerning right now. I don't know if you looked at the Fangraphs projected lineup, but they have Derek Hall hitting fourth.
Yeah, I have him as a player to watch, but I don't think he's that. Yeah. I don't think he's at that level quite yet.
It's not a lot to be desired after Turner, Schwarber, and Real Muto because Castellanos is fifth. We need more out of him. Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm, Jake Cave, Brandon Marsh, guys with some potential, but. And I don't feel great about it. Rotation I also don't really feel great about in this moment, other than Nola and Wheeler. It's Walker, who you said is a question mark. Bailey Falter, who's my player to watch, who's going to need to locate his sinker better. And then Matt Strahm is starting pitcher 5 right now, who's not a starter.
Yeah, true.
Not at all a starter. They did make some upgrades to the bullpen with Craig Kimbrell and Gregory Soto. I think having Jose Alvarado and Gregory Soto in the same bullpen is hilarious. Because they're like the same pitcher.
Yeah, true.
The Hoskins and Harper injuries really worry me about this team. I think that's kind of all I have to say, though.
Yeah, and the Boomer thing to talk about also is like, World Series hangover. It's hard to get back. They might struggle in the beginning of the season. So that, along with the Harper injury, could labor them in the first few months of the year. So, but we'll see with them. In the second place, I have the Mets, which means I have the NL East going exactly how it did last year.
Nice.
So I have the Mets. I have the Mets also as a playoff team in the 5th seed in my National League playoffs. Um, so yeah, I do see. So I see the Mets being a playoff team, but I see them not winning 101 games like they did last year. I think a lot of players had great years last year that won't be quite as great as they were last year. Like Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo both had 5-win seasons. I don't know if you can necessarily bank on that, especially with Nimmo's health. I think he has the ability, if he stays healthy, to produce 5-win seasons consistently. But who knows? Potentially he'll stay healthy. But also Jeff McNeil, like I think he had a career high in wins above replacement last year. Who knows if he maintains that? The Edwin Diaz and Jose Quintana injuries do not help them. Diaz out the whole year. He was the staple of their bullpen, and Jose Quintana is out for 3 months as well. Who was a $26 million signing that they had this past offseason, who was really like an under the radar good signing, but unfortunately he's going to be out for the first 3 months of the year. So even with those negative, I will say Cohen put this team in a position where I believe they will comfortably make the playoffs. It's just, I think they'll drop a little bit in win total because of A, the injuries, and B, like they had some career years last year. I don't know if they can necessarily rely on this year. Who do you got in second place?
I have the Atlanta Braves in second, so we do have a difference at the top of the division. I do expect Ronald Acuna Jr. to have a bounce back year. He played, still recovering from the torn ACL last year. I think Matt Olson does a little bit better in his second year in Atlanta. But I do have some concerns right now with injuries that have played to the rotation. Fangraphs only has them with 4 projected starting pitchers to start the season, with Max Fried, Spencer Strider, Jared Schuster, their number 1 prospect, who I think will break camp, and then Charlie Morton, because Kyle Wright is hurt right now. Mike Soroka, unfortunately, is hurt. Huascar Yanoa is still recovering from Tommy John surgery and whatnot. I think the lineup does have a couple question marks. Right now it has Marcelo Zuna hitting 4th. I don't want him getting too many plate appearances after last year. Ozzy Albies, I'm not too sure what I feel about him on offense. He's going to be recovering from a long-term injury, broken knee, I believe it was. I think obviously this lineup has some names. I think this team could win 100 games, but right now there's too many question marks for me to put them in first. But I easily could be wrong.
Yeah, I personally am very high on the Braves. Although they did lose Swanson, and the injuries to Wright and Soroka and Inoue are concerning, and the lack of starting depth to start the year is concerning. I think we could also put in the perspective like injuries are going to happen. It's just they happen to have a lot at the beginning of the year. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be as long-standing. The Braves, I'm really high, and I have them as my first seed in the National League playoffs because in a year where Acuna, Olson, and Morton had relative down years, they still won 101 games in 2022. They also finished the year, I think, what was it, like 74-34 or something, like 74-31, something crazy.
Yeah.
They were absolutely insane from June 1st on, pretty much, is when they started to really break out. We should expect improvement from Acuna and Olson. Acuna, especially based on the batted ball data that we found last year, like he was like 92nd percentile in expected slugging, but he got a little bit unlucky with his batted balls for whatever reason. I think Sean Murphy is a great addition. Even though they lost William Contreras, Murphy is up there is around the same level offensively as Contreras, plus amazing defense. He's already won a Gold Glove in his young career. I think there's potential for more innings from Spencer Strider. Although I guess hypothetically you could be concerned about a guy as small as he is throwing, averaging 98 on his fastball. I think there's potential for more innings until he shows that maybe he's an injury concern. I know he had like one IL stint last year, but I'm not putting all my cards into that. So I think there's potential for more innings from Strider. I also think there's a lot of like like still relative young talent, even if they've been in the league for a little bit. That's still like getting really good. Ozzy Albies is one of them. Austin Riley's only 26 years old. Let's remember. Max Fried, I think, still hasn't turned 30 yet. There's a lot of still like young developing players, not necessarily guys like 22, 23 developing, except for Vaughn Grissom, but guys who are still, in their reaching their prime, getting to their prime right now. So that's why I'm really high on the Braves. Why do you have the Mets in
The
first
Mets.
place?
This is a $300 million team. It's hard to justify not having them win the division. I know that the Braves are very good, but the Mets are a pretty deep team, even without Edwin Diaz, the injury that they had. Even though bullpen is definitely a question mark now,
Yeah.
but the lineup is fantastic. Brandon Nimmo, Starlin Marte, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil. You have a lot of intriguing guys. You have Brett Beatty that could be coming up eventually. I wish he broke camp. Mark Vientos is another guy. Francisco Alvarez will be catching this year. I expect, like the Yankees, there are a team that might be relying a lot on the younger guys, but also they have a lot of guys that they know they're going to get production from. In the rotation, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, that kind of goes without saying. David Peterson is actually going to be the 2-starter for this team to start the year. I'm anticipating a breakout from him. He's had a lot of promise over the couple of years. Kodai Senga and Carlos Carrasco, I think, will take steps forward. The Quintana injury does suck, obviously, but I think this team will find a way. And even in the bullpen, I think this team will find a way. David Robertson, Adam Ottavino, Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, John Curtis, those are kind of the leaders in that pen. It's certainly a downgrade, but I think they're going to be able to figure it out. This team obviously has very high expectations. They're looking to for revenge from last year, both in the division and the wild card series. And I think this is the year that they break out and win the division.
Yeah, it would break a 5-year streak for the Braves. The Braves have been the division winners every year since 2018. But
Yeah.
hey, yeah, that could definitely change. And the Mets surely have a talented enough team to overtake the Braves. No question about it. Even with the Diaz loss, as you mentioned. And now, time to get into the National League Central. It's always a fun race at the bottom. Who do you have taking it this year?
I have very little competition at the bottom this year. I think the Reds have this on lock. Their owner can't stop just opening his mouth at all, ever. So that's unfortunate. Their offense looks very, very uninspiring from pretty much top to bottom. I think Tyler Stevenson is decent, and I think Spencer Steer can be an interesting piece, but that's really it. Jonathan India, he did have a bit of a down year last year, and I'm sure he can get back to where he was, but other than that, that's really the only thing I'm looking for in the Reds this year. Is Joey Votto opening the year injured? Yes, he is. I think. I don't know. It doesn't show that on Fangraphs. The only thing to really be excited about overall is the rotation. It's very young. Between Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Graham Ashcraft, there's a lot to look forward to there. Unfortunately, they have to be cursed with the worst ballpark for pitchers.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That's really all I have on the Reds. There's not too much to look at.
Yeah. Luckily, with with Green and Lodolo being strikeout pitchers, I guess they take the ball out of play more. So
Yeah, it also just doesn't make sense that Graham Ashcraft didn't get many strikeouts last year because he throws 100. It must just be very straight.
Yeah. A little Joe Kelly-ish.
Yeah.
Joe Kelly in his starter
Hunter
days.
Green in April.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right.
Yeah, dude, he was throwing straight as a line.
Yeah. Yeah, they're interesting. Although, who said this is an inside thing? But who said that they're a potential top 3 rotation?
I don't think I ever said that.
That was Rob.
He said he's excited about the
Reds'
three.
top 3. Okay, I misread that. Whoops.
I was gonna say I don't think anyone's saying they're a top 3 rotation.
I was like, what? Okay, all right.
Although Graham Ashcraft, I will say, does have a very nice batted ball profile. 54% ground ball rate, 18% fly ball rate. That's perfectly ideal for CABP or GABP.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Sweet spot percentage against of 31%.
Yeah, that's very good.
Really, all he needs to do is get more whiffs.
Yeah, yeah. So with the with my last place pick, I also have the Reds. I think the Pirates did enough to add major league talent to push them out of last place. And yeah, with the Reds, you know, as you mentioned, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, do they look like bright spots? Jonathan India could bounce back. Jake Fraley could remain above average, but also we have to note that Kevin Newman is their projected 6 hitter.
Yeah.
So that's not great. Yeah, there's outside of Alexis Diaz, there's nothing really in the bullpen. Outside of Green, Lodolo, and potentially Ashcraft, there's not much with the rotation. So yeah, they won 62 games last year, and I don't see that number really changing much in this upcoming year. Who do you have in fourth?
Watch this. I have the Cubs in fourth.
Ooh.
Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting that one. The Cubs made a couple additions to their lineup, but they're definitely more flyers than like people that they're investing in, other than Dansby Swanson, of course. But I
Yeah.
mean, you look at Trey Mancini, you look at Cody Bellinger, you look at Eric Hosmer, and other than maybe Mancini, I don't, and probably Bellinger, I guess they're not probably picturing those guys in the long run. Of course, Bellinger has been a resurgence candidate for the last 3 years. It hasn't happened yet, and at this point, I'm just not sure if it's going to. I don't know. I can't really explain it, but Cody Bellinger has not even come remotely close to replicating his 2019 MVP season.
Yeah.
He got non-tendered by the Dodgers.
He hasn't even come close to his 2017 Rookie of the Year campaign.
No, you're right. He hasn't. The rotation looks very fun. Other than Stroman and Tyone, which are like the best two pitchers they have, but I like Justin Steele. I like Hayden Wesneski, and both of them are going to make the opening day rotation, which is very exciting. But other than that, I mean, there's still a lot of question marks, things I'm just not sure about. This team does not really move me very much, I'm going to be honest. So I am going with the Cubs at number 4 in the division.
Yeah, I get that. They're some of their additions are like they've been good before, but we'll see about them.
Mm.
I went the way of the road, and I picked the Pirates in
Yeah.
fourth. And it is sort of an improvement. They were tied for last with the Reds, and I crowned them last place champions last year because they've held that belt for a while. So you gotta actually lose more games than them to move them out. But with the Pirates, I like, as I mentioned before, I like the major league talent that they added with Andrew McCutchen, G-Man Choi, Carlos Santana, trying to make this team a little bit watchable. Along with that, you could see a good development with younger talent, such as O'Neal Cruz, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Andy Rodriguez, Roisny Contreras, and Mitch Keller, who I know has been around a little bit, but he's also I think he's heading into his age 27 or 28 season.
27.
27 season, so could easily see some development from him. I know I picked an over on his ERA, but still could see.
Hang on, I
could be wrong about that.
Mitch Keller was like really good down the stretch last year, and like nobody talked about it.
I know he ended with a sub 4 ERA.
Oh, it was more than sub 4.
I think it was a 3.91.
Hold on. Well, yeah, he ended with a 3.91, but like in his last like X amount of starts, he was insane.
Right. Yeah.
He had a 2.71 ERA in his last 83 innings.
Yeah, that's pretty
with
good.
With a 3.62 FIP.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So yeah, I think with younger development, along with the major league talent they added, they could push. Obviously I'm not as high on them as you are, but I could see them pushing 70 wins here.
The only way I'd hesitate to put this team at third, I did put this team at third. The only hesitation that I had was who knows what the deal is with Brian Reynolds. Maybe he's not on the team, and maybe he is. It's kind of hard to tell. But regardless, I do really like this team to improve. I could see them winning I could see them being like what the Orioles were last year, where they came out of nowhere, had a winning record, whatever. But you look at this lineup, it's not bad. The only person I'd consider bad is Austin Hedges, and hopefully at some point he'll be replaced by Andy Rodriguez.
Yeah.
who is significantly better. I can't speak for his defense, but on offense, he's miles better than Austin Hedges. But O'Neal Cruz, he's a guy that we've all been hoping for a breakout because he's a very fun player to watch when he's good. Brian Reynolds, we know what he can do. Andrew McCutchen, it is kind of a fan service move, but he's still serviceable out
Yeah.
there. Carlos Santana should be the leadoff guy in this lineup, if I'm being completely honest. I know it's a hot take, but he
Yeah.
gets on base. G-Man Choi, Ke'Bryan Hayes, who has been injured the last couple of years. I think there's a lot of potential in him on offense. Jack Sawinski doesn't get a lot of notice, but I think he is very good. He did very well last year before he got hurt. And then obviously Hedges. In the rotation, you have Keller, who I've mentioned has potential to break out. You have Major League veterans like Rich Hill and Vince Velasquez, who can, sort of serve, do whatever. You have Roansy Contreras and Johan Oviedo to finish it out. But I'm looking more at what this team has coming up. I mentioned Endy Rodriguez. I think he's going to be in the majors this year. He should be in the majors this year. I know the Pirates wouldn't hate to, manipulate his service time a little. But also guys like Luis Ortiz, Mike Burrows, Quinn Priester. I'm not so sure Quinn Priester is going to be up this year. He's probably going to be a September call-up. But Burrows and Ortiz, I really want to see them taking sustainable roles in the rotation this year. And I think if they do, there's a lot to be excited about with this team top to bottom. And I have them finishing in third in the NL Central.
Yeah. There's definitely a little bit of development you can see there with the Pirates organizationally. Some of those top picks are starting to rise up and make it a decent farm system, and they already have Cruz and Hayes at the major league level, making things happen. So yeah, there's some potential for development with the Pirates. I know I like to make fun of them personally, but they could be developing. With third place, I have the Cubs. So, I think that Dansby Swanson edition should be good. The tie-in edition, I initially didn't like, and I'm still not too high on it, but I think him going from AL East batters to NL Central batters could play a factor in him potentially improving. So, I'm not counting that out. I know the amount of games that teams will play within the division is going to go down this year, but still, I think there's a fair enough difference where he's going from facing, the Red Sox lineup, Yankees, Blue Jays, Rays lineup, or no, not the Yankees lineup. Mm-hmm. Whoops. If he goes from facing the Orioles, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Rays to facing, Brewers, Pirates, Reds, and Cardinals are like the only good offense out of that group. So I think that could have a little bit of potential. Obviously, I like Justin Steele in that rotation. I put him as a player to watch.
Yes.
Stroman is good enough. But as far as I can't really put them above third because there's too many question marks with this team. As you mentioned before, they took a lot of flyers like Mancini, Bellinger. I can't fake excitement for him right now.
I can't either. I got to see it.
Yeah, I got to see it to believe it. Bullpen-wise, I forgot who they have in that bullpen. But I don't know what they got going on.
Let me check because honestly, I don't really know off the top of my head either.
But I know they won 74 games last year.
They have Michael Fulmer as their closer. I do know they have Julian Merriweather, who I liked for a week in 2021.
That's true.
They have Brad Boxberger. They do have Adbert Alzolay. I hope we can actually see a full year of him.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Boxberger was a good addition.
Yeah.
And
how long has he been playing? Feels like he's been around forever.
Yeah, I've heard that name a lot.
I remember him on the Rays.
Yes, me too. And yeah,
2012. Wow.
I know Alzolay had some good numbers as a reliever, particularly. But yeah, with the Cubs, I think they're a third place team. They won 74 games last year. I think they could maybe get 77, 78 this year. The Pirates, the Pirates won 62 last year. Mm-hmm. It would take a lot of development to close that gap between them and the Cubs. I don't think they'll do it particularly this year.
That's fair.
Who do you have in second place?
In second place, I have the Milwaukee Brewers, the team that finished second last year. This team just barely missed the playoffs, and they had some injury problems, especially within the rotation. Freddie Peralta is hopefully going to be making a return this year. Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. Burns will be pitching out of spite this year,
Yeah.
which will be fun. They made some nice additions to the lineup, things that, guys that could really potentially boost them up. Jesse Winker is going to be there. William Contreras, Rowdy Tellez will be without the shift, like you mentioned, as your player to watch. I think
Yep.
this team will get some big upgrades from within on offense and also just in general. I'm really hoping that like Sal Frelick comes up this year, and we could see him because he's their top prospect, guy out of Boston College.
Sal Frelick.
Frelick.
Yeah. He's their top pro. Is he over Corio?
No, I forgot about Corio. Corio we're not seeing this year.
Yeah,
He's 19
biggest
years old.
prospect that could come up this year.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. I hope that we could see some time out of him. But ultimately, I just don't see them over the Cardinals. I still, need to see more out of their offense. But it wouldn't surprise me if they won the division. But I don't know. No one on this offense really strikes fear into me.
Right.
Unless, of course, like someone breaks out, which is possible.
Yeah. Tellez is like the biggest potential guy, but even then, it would take a little bit. I was really tempted to have another change in first place with the NL Central because we've done 3 years of doing predictions. I've never gotten the NL Central correct, and I think it's because I always go with the team that won the year before. So I was tempted to take a different team this year, but I'm not. I'm going with the Brewers. I think
fair.
If the Cardinals do win the division this year, I think they'd be the first NL Central team to go back-to-back in the NL Central since I think the 16 and 17 Cubs. So it's been a while since an NL Central team has won back-to-back division titles.
Then the Cubs, right?
Yeah, Cubs 16-17, I think.
But they
Because
didn't
it
even win
was-
it in 18.
Because it was
That's crazy.
Brewers,
Yeah, Brewers, Cardinals,
Bulls.
Brewers. No,
Cubs.
Cubs, Brewers,
Brewers.
Cardinals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, with the Brewers, I think there is some optimism with the Brewers. Hopefully they get a full season of Freddie Peralta. They only got
Yes.
78 innings out of him. And that was a guy who had a 2.70 expected ERA last year. Great strikeout to walk numbers continuing from 2021. So hopefully they have him the whole year. The losses of Colton Wong and Hunter Renfroe aren't great. However, the additions of William Contreras and Jesse Winker should be good, should put them in a good place. I know you had Contreras as a player to watch. He's a young, very good hitter who could take that catcher role for the Brewers. Tellez, he could see major improvement, but have to see it to believe it, of course. We don't know. We could outlook the shift thing, but it could also end up not being as effective as we thought it would be.
Yeah.
Because
Entirely possible.
all these departments have a way of doing things, so who knows? But yeah, that's what I got on the Brewers. Why do you have the Cardinals winning the NL Central?
So, I really like this team's lineup a lot more than I did last year. Obviously, you have Goldschmidt and Arenado, and I don't think Goldschmidt's going to be able to exactly replicate his season last year. Luck was definitely on his side for a lot of it, but, I still think that he'll be an MVP-type bat, as will Nolan Arenado. But I really like the idea of getting more at-bats out of Lars Nootbaar this year. I really like Brendan Donovan getting more at-bats. I love the addition of Wilson Contreras. That's definitely a upgrade over Yadier Molina offensively. And I am very excited that this team is bringing Jordan Walker up to the Major League roster on opening day. So this lineup is definitely one to watch. There's also potential for a Tyler O'Neill resurgence. There's potential for a Dylan Carlson breakout. There's potential for a Nolan Gorman breakout. And there's potential for Tommy Edman to keep doing what he did last year. And if that happens, they're really firing on all cylinders on offense. And their rotation is pretty solid too. Of course, you have Michaelis, you have Jordan Montgomery. Wainwright's going to start on the IL, but he'll be there. And then fingers crossed we get Jack Flaherty and maybe a resurgence out of Steven Matz as well. And then in the bullpen, Ryan Helsley is filthy. He needs no introduction. You also have, Giovanni Gallegos, my guy, Andre Palante. This team looks very complete. I don't know how I feel about them matching up with one of the big dogs in the NL, but
Yeah.
I think this division is theirs to lose right now.
Right. And at the front of that, I think you meant to say Goldschmidt had more luck on his side.
Did I say Arenado?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what I meant.
Yeah. Because I know Arenado also had actual stats above expected stats, but I think that's because he pulls a lot of home runs. And if you pull a lot of home runs, typically your expected slugging, because that's not to get off track here, but the flaw with the StatCast data is it doesn't
Account for what part of the ballpark you hit
yeah,
it to.
it doesn't account for direction of the ball. So yeah, a 400-foot bomb to left is considered the same as a 400-foot bomb to center.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so into why I'm picking the Cardinals as NL Central champions. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. A lot of what I put in the notes is identical to some of your talking points. You could expect some bounce backs from Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, and you could also see some development from Nootbaar. I think Nootbaar, like he had a 125 OPS plus, weighted runs created plus, and whatnot, but his expected numbers were still better. And that was only in 347 plate appearances. Now this guy's going to get probably over 500 plate appearances. So that's always a good addition. We'll see about Jordan Walker if he makes a good Rookie of the Year campaign. He could add a lot to the team and that offense. With starting pitching, it's a low strikeout unit, but the defense, there's nothing to suggest that defense won't back them up the same way they have over the past couple of years. It's a really athletic defense with Arenado, Edman, Paul Goldschmidt has some good defensive prowess as well, along with O'Neill's been a good defender. I think Carlson as well. They have a lot of good defense to back that pitching up, and the pitching I think will do solid enough to keep them afloat. And I think with the Cardinals, I think over the last 2 months of the year, they led in weighted runs created plus. I mean, that's a really good lineup, and they had a couple like down years too last year. So I'd expect some bounce backs. And I agree that I still don't really see them as much of a threat in the NL playoffs, but the NL Central, I think they'll be able to take care of business. However, teams in the NL Central have had trouble repeating, so I'm not putting anything out of question in that division. There's a reason I've gotten the division winner wrong all 3 times so far. All right. So now we get into the National League West, where I have the Rockies at the bottom.
Good.
I would say what I'll say is they're not a god-awful team, but I can't view them on the same level as the other teams in the division. I think the Diamondbacks are developing well. The Giants have a lot of a good amount of major league talent who've been there and done that before, and then obviously the Dodgers and Padres are on another level from the Rockies. So, the Rockies, sure, they could even push 70 wins, but I don't think
Dick Monfort says they're going to play 500 ball.
Well, all right.
I also have the Rockies in 5th. You said they're not a god-awful team, but they are a god-awful franchise.
True.
I hate that front office with every fiber of my being, and I'm not even a fan of the team. I can't imagine how Rockies fans feel. This team just sucks. I don't know. I mean, they are better on paper than like the A's or the Nationals, but I feel like this team just should be worse.
Right.
They deserve to be worse somehow. And Oakland doesn't really try to win, at least at this stage. But the Rockies, they just are frustrating, man. I mean, they have guys. They have Chris Bryant. They have C.J. Cron, who can hit exclusively at cores. But they just make the most puzzling moves. They trade for Nolan Jones only to sign Mike Moustakas and have Nolan Jones start in AAA because they have to have Mike Moustakas on the roster. A guy who's going to be entering his age 34 season, who has not been good since basically 2019.
Yeah.
Nothing that they do makes sense. It's just overwhelmingly frustrating to keep watching time and time again. Like I've always said, the worst thing that they could have ever done was bring someone from within as their GM, and it doesn't surprise me. There's a thread on Twitter. I'll find the person that it's from, but it was basically explaining how the Rockies care more about their franchise culture and keeping their guys. Like they're very much a nepotism organization where like if you worked for them before, like if you've been with them for a while, like they will never move on from you no
Right.
matter what, whether you're good or bad. And especially talking about how like the big issue is like if there's ever a franchise player that values winning over being with a team, that's where you see problems. We saw with Troy Tulowitzki, we saw with Nolan Arenado. And they will never make the move that really corresponds with long-term winning or even short-term winning.
Right.
The thread in question is from it's at Matt Gross 87 on Twitter. Just go look it up. Just go look up at Matt Gross 87 Rockies or whatever on Twitter. And check out his thing. I mean, I know Daniel Barr is your guy to watch, but did it really make sense to give him an extension at the trade deadline?
No, they should have traded him.
Absolutely, they should have traded him. He's, 37, 38 years old?
Yeah.
He's 37 years old.
Having a career year.
Yeah. They make the most nonsensical moves. I remember they were the only, at the trade deadline last year, they said, like, well, actually, we were the only franchise to sign an extension. It's like, one, you signed a 37-year-old having a career year to an extension, and two, did you not see the Braves extension to Austin Riley at the trade deadline?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. This franchise just sucks. They're frustrating. They're infuriating. And they just, like, the players and the fans don't deserve it, but that front office deserves to get last place every season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just been bad for a little bit, and yeah, the Arenado situation was bad. The Story situation
They
was
didn't
bad.
give John Gray the qualifying offer and then just never offered him anything.
Yeah.
They were just like, actually, we don't want this draft pick. Go somewhere else, please.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So yeah, we both have the Rockies in last. In fourth place, I have the Diamondbacks. I was really tempted to put them third place, but I really dislike at least for 2023 as it is. Maybe for the future it's different, but for 2023, I don't like the Dalton Varsho subtraction that they made. Also, the lack of pitching depth detracts me. They have Gallen and Kelly at the top of that starting rotation. Brandon Fod could come up and Ryan Nelson could come up, but how often do we see a rookie pitcher really like put himself as an elite pitcher right away? It's not very often. And then Madison Bumgarner's still in there, not having a yelling at anybody who does less than a sprint on the base paths. I think there's a lack of pitching depth, and also letting go of Varsho takes away a little bit of their athleticism that they had. I mean, that guy had 18 outs above average last year, so that the Arizona Diamondbacks, they led in outs above average last year, but taking away Varsho takes away a lot of that. But also along with that, I think the Giants have enough to stay above the Diamondbacks. And what tempted me about the Diamondbacks, I will say, is the idea of a full year of Corbin Carroll. We talked about him when he got that extension a couple weeks ago. What his potential is. There's a reason why he's the number two prospect in all of baseball, according to MLB.com, and number one in some people's books. I mean, there's a big reason for that. I also, there's the potential of the continued success of Zach Gallen and Christian Walker, also the general athleticism of the team, really is an attractive thing to potentially put them in third. However, I have them in fourth. This was a team who was first in BSR and first in outs above average in all of baseball last year. So very athletic team, and Corbin Carroll coming up for a full year will definitely add to that. But I still have them in fourth place because of, I don't see them developing quite up to that level yet. Who do you have in fourth place?
I went with your Temptations, and I took the San Francisco Giants to finish fourth. This team definitely has a lot of question marks in the lineup specifically. I think the only person you can really rely on to produce is probably Jock Peterson, and even that, his ceiling is about like mid 800s OPS. Uh, so I'm not too sure what to think of this lineup. Michael Conforto has not played since what 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't played since 2020, so that isn't very, encouraging. Brandon Crawford suffered a major regression year last year. Lamont Wade Jr., same thing. Same goes for a lot of the lineup. I do like the rotation in the bullpen. I think Logan Webb is fantastic. I think Alex Cobb is due to be better. Sean Manaea should be due for a resurgence here. Ross Stripling and Alex Wood were both solid pieces last year. And then in the bullpen, Camilo Doval, Tyler Rogers. There's some interesting guys. Mitch Haniger is going to start the season on the IL, which definitely does confirm a lot of concerns that I had for the team because, Mitch Haniger, Michael Conforto, those are guys with pretty lengthy injury histories. So I am a little concerned on the depth of this team. And yeah, that's my thoughts on the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely raised. I have some concerns about the Giants. I have them in third place. I don't like the Carlos Rodon loss, obviously, but I also like some of the smaller deals they did. Ross Stripling, Sean Manaea, Mitch Haniger, Michael Conforto, and even Taylor Rogers, I think, is due to bounce back a little bit. He's always been a good strikeout guy. I don't think he'll be as bad as he was last year. And I think there's some guys that had some real down years who, like Brandon Crawford. I know he's 36, I think, but I still think he will do better than last year. I wouldn't expect an 85 OPS plus and terrible defense from Brandon Crawford for this upcoming year. I wouldn't expect that. I think he was also muddled with injuries a little bit, so I'd expect him to do a little bit better. Not, getting MVP votes or anything, but a little bit better. I think they'll be around the same place last year. I think, the Rodon loss coupled with many of the mini additions they made kind of neutralizes them a little bit and puts them in a neutral spot. I think the Diamondbacks, if the Diamondbacks do overcome the Giants, I think I'd put that toward like a little bit of an early arrival. I imagine it would require a little Carroll breakout, maybe Brandon Pfaadt coming in the rotation and making a really good impact. I think it would be a good early arrival for the Diamondbacks. I'm not forecasting it, but I wouldn't be surprised by it. But I do have the Giants, and I don't have them being near what the Padres and Dodgers are, because I think in order for that to happen, they would have had to keep Rodon and probably sign one of Correa or Judge, and they don't have any of those players. So yeah. I think they'll remain around 500. Who do you have in third place?
In third place, I do have the Arizona Diamondbacks. I believe that this team is capable of a lot of things, breakout-wise. They did lose Dalton Varsho, but they still have a very strong outfield with Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, and your player to watch, Jake McCarthy.
Yep.
Right. And all three of those guys are very good defenders, so it's not like they are losing Varsho's defense, but it's not like the replacement is anywhere that's pretty bad compared to him. They're going to continue to have Christian Walker. Hopefully they can get some kind of resurgence out of Ketel Marte. I don't know how much I want to expect out of him. Maybe like a 115, 120 OPS plus should work. And also, they got Gabriel Moreno, which I think people should be very excited about. In spring training, how many plate appearances? 31 plate appearances. He's slashing 370, 452, 741 for an 1192 OPS. So there's reason to be excited about Gabriel Moreno, the catcher that they got in that trade for Varsho. And they also got Lourdes Gurriel in it as well. Very serviceable bat. Like the Angels, they're not going to be giving as many plate appearances to the people that don't exactly deserve it offensively. Like they gave Geraldo Perdomo exactly 500 plate appearances last year, and he had a 58 weighted runs created plus.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'll be doing that again. There's going to be upgrades made on offense. Their defense hopefully will be just as good. And in the rotation right now doesn't look very good. It's Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Madison Bumgarner, Ryan Nelson, Zach Davies. I would like them at some point to replace Madison Bumgarner and Zach Davies with Brandon Pfaadt and Dre Jameson, and that's a full rotation of very good starters.
Yeah.
Especially in the the condensed area that is Chase Field. So I'm excited for the Diamondbacks. I think they can be a sneaky good team, and I do have them above the Giants this year.
Yeah. 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 The Diamondbacks. Yeah. Nonetheless, I think they're going to be a fun team to watch, no matter where they place. You're going to see some good defensive highlights, see a lot of stolen bases. They're kind of they'll probably maybe benefit a little bit from the new rules and whatnot. So they'll be fun no matter what they do. In second place, so I'll preface this: I'm buying into the hype. I really slandered the Padres a lot last year, so I'm giving them their due and putting them in first place. But I'll talk about the Dodgers first and why that I have them as second place. They lost some major pieces, obviously, with Trey Turner, Tyler Anderson, and Justin Turner. I guess Tyler Anderson, he's sort of a product of what the Dodgers do, systematically. So maybe you could say that. However, losing Trey Turner, who's one of the best players in baseball, doesn't help. Justin Turner, not only a very good hitter still in his late 30s, but also, kind of a heartbeat of that team. He's one of the only guys that's been around for as long as he has with the Dodgers, and now he's not there. And I don't think they did enough to supplement those moves. And along with that, not only did they lose those guys to free agency, lost Gavin Lux for the year. He tore his ACL, unfortunately, very early in spring training. He will not be with the Dodgers at all on the field this year. And also Walker Buehler. We knew about him being out for the whole year, but that doesn't really help either, that Walker Buehler is going to be out for the whole year. So it hurts their rotation. Granted, I have the Dodgers as a playoff team, but them going from 111 wins to second place is a bit of a downgrade, so I have to talk about all the negatives.
Yeah.
The lineup outside of Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Will Smith, I wouldn't say is too intimidating. I guess Max Muncy is due for a bit of a bounce back, but they got Miguel Rojas at the shortstop position, taking at bats. That's not the most intimidating thing. Compared to last year or the year before, it was a lot different. And also just them, the new rule changes, I don't think they'll take a crazy major effect, but the Dodgers have utilized the shift extremely well.
Yes.
And
very often.
Very often, and that being taken away could negatively affect them. I looked it up on the Fielding Bible. Shout out Mark Simon.
The defensive correspondent.
Mark Simon. But I looked on the Fielding Bible, and as a team, they saved the most runs via infield shift out of anyone in baseball last year. So that being taken away from them is going to hurt them, although I know their analytical departments will probably figure something out, but I think they'll be hurt by that. Also, I would expect regression from Julio Urias and Tony Gonsolin. They're not, they're good pitchers, but they're not sub 2.2 ERA pitchers, I would say, given their strikeout and walk numbers.
Is Tony Gonsolin going to be in anytime soon?
Is he injured?
Yeah.
So, yeah, him being injured.
Let me check.
Him being injured doesn't help anything. Like Arias, I wouldn't expect a 2.16 ERA or anything. I'd expect it closer to 3, even above 3. So obviously the Dodgers are still one of the best teams in the game. But I'm buying into the Padres hype, and I'll get into why I'm buying into the Padres hype.
Yeah.
When I get to them, talking about them as my first place team. Who do you have in second place?
I also have the Dodgers in second place, so I'm with you in buying into the hype. Just real quick, Tony Gonsolin has a sprained ankle, and the injury happened on March 7th, and it says that he will not be ready for opening day, but there doesn't really seem to be much of a timetable.
I mean,
so
it could be. I mean,
who knows?
Typically,
it could be like precautionary things.
Right.
'Cause people do that a lot in spring training.
Yeah. It could be like 6 to 8 weeks
Yeah.
or 4 to 6. I don't know. But luckily, like, it doesn't seem like something that should linger, considering it's not like shoulder inflammation or like forearm tightness or something. So
Yeah.
seems like a weird freak thing. Anyway,
I agree with you that I think the Padres are worth buying into the hype over. If you look at the Dodgers lineup outside of Betts, Freeman, and Smith, Max Muncy, yeah, maybe due for a bounce back. He had some tough BABIP luck last year. JD Martinez lost a lot of power last year. Although he is a guy that goes the other way a lot, and that's probably going to help him more at Dodger Stadium than it did at Fenway. He's also going to be back with Mookie Betts, so who knows what happens there. David Peralta could be interesting, but he's definitely past his prime, I'd say. He's going into his age 35 season. Trace Thompson, I don't think he's going to be able to replicate what he had last year. He went crazy for a couple of months. Miguel Vargas, he's going to need to adjust to Major League pitching first, and then Miguel Rojas, whatever. In the rotation, Arias is fine. I think he's also due for regression. This team doesn't look as dazzling as they were before, so who knows how much he gets carried by his winning percentage this year.
yeah.
Because that and his run support was fantastic the last couple of years. I'm excited for Dustin May to come back for a full season, and I'm excited for Clayton Kershaw to keep doing his thing, but the rotation definitely does not have as much depth as it used to. The bullpen's fine. I'm sure guys will step up. But yeah, this team, while they're still very good, I don't have them above the Padres this year.
Yeah, for sure. The bullpen I will say is probably their best asset on the team. Like it stayed mostly the same except they lost Kimbrel, but he had like a 4 ERA last year too.
Exactly.
They have a lot of the guys that made them good last year, so that will stay good. I mean, it's why I have them as the 4th seed in my NL playoffs, so I think they'll be a really good team nonetheless. First place I have the San Diego Padres. I think like all the projections have them winning too, like all those Fangraphs projections and whatnot. With the Padres, having Tatis back and adding Bogarts should play a huge role this year. Having a full year of Juan Soto, and probably Soto on a bounce-back season, should play a huge role. They didn't really lose much in the offseason. From May onward, they should have Tatis, Machado, Soto, Bogarts, Cronenworth, Darvish, Snell, Musgrove, and Hader, along with solid surrounding pieces like Ha-Sung Kim, Trent Grisham, Nick Martinez, Seth Lugo, and Luis Garcia. They're a really star-studded team, but they're also still a very deep team. So, there's a reason I'm buying into the hype. They won 89 games last year, but that was without Tatis. That was without Bogarts, who they both will have now. I know Musgrove had a weight room incident, but I think he's due to come back on like April 11 or April 16 or something like that, sometime in mid-April. He should be coming back, and Tatis, obviously, he'll service 20 games. And he will be back and be able to, and unless he has to knock off some rust, should be extremely productive for the Padres. So, I'm buying into the hype. We've wanted to for a while. They underwhelmed us in 2021. Maybe kind of was on track, or maybe underwhelmed us a little bit in 2022, except for the playoffs. They really did well in the playoffs. But I'm buying into their hype for 2023.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said everything I wanted to say. Tatis is eligible to come back on April 20th. Although I will mention Bogarts and Soto have minor injuries right now. It's questionable whether they'll be ready for opening day or not. I think both of them probably will be. For Bogarts, it was wrist discomfort. For Soto, it was a strained oblique. Nothing too crazy. But, yeah, I mean, this is a team that looks excellent top to bottom. The lineup is fantastic. The rotation, when healthy, is great with Yu Darvish, with Blake Snell, with Joe Musgrove, and then depth pieces like Nick Martinez, Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, Jay Groom. The bullpen with Hader is going to be excellent. I think Hader is going to look a lot more like he did in the end of that 2022 season in his few appearances after the trade. Right immediately after the trade, he was awful, but then he picked it up and started doing much better.
Yeah.
I think this team is very, very exciting. It's almost something that baseball needed, is like this, this very fun team in a small market that is building a super team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Padres are going to be fun, and they have them finishing first.
Yeah, they should be fun. Yes, kind of a smaller market team, as you mentioned. And yeah, this has kind of been in the making since 2020. Like
Yeah.
in 2020, they really surprised everyone. They had the second best record in the NL. And then since then they've added Bogarts and Soto, and Machado has improved, and Tatis has been an MVP finalist. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
They've added Musgrove and Snell. Yeah. So yeah, those are all our standings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you want to do questions or awards first?
Oh, I was going to do playoffs. Do you have playoffs?
Oh, playoffs? Yeah,
Yeah.
I got playoffs. So maybe we should end on playoffs because of
Fair enough. Let's do sleeper teams. Do you have those?
Well, I figure define sleeper teams. I could go off the cuff.
I usually pick one sleeper team from each league every year, so I'll just name mine.
Yeah.
My AL sleeper team, I don't know how much you can really consider them a sleeper because people talk about them all the time, but I'm going with the Angels. I think there's a lot of potential in that team this year. Obviously, the narrative around them is always very negative, and especially this year when it's, Shohei's last year. Artie Moreno just announced he's not selling, which is like literally the worst thing that could have happened. So that is what it is. My NL sleeper team is the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm very excited to see what this team can do if everyone comes up, which is a question because they do love to manipulate that service time. But the Angels and Pirates are my sleeper teams.
So if I had to put labels on, if I had to put labels on things, I'd say AL sleeper team for me is Rays. Even though I have them as a third place team, I could easily see them breaking out of that. This is a team that 2 years ago won 100 games, and their roster doesn't look crazy different from what it did 2 years ago, and they still have, they got a full year of Wander Franco potentially. Their starting pitching staff is probably the best it's looked since the 2020 World Series when they had Snell, Morton, and Glasnow, and I think I'm forgetting somebody. But yeah, those three plus a couple other guys. Yeah, I really like that Rays rotation. I think their bullpen is in very good shape, and I like the top four in the lineup. And I think there's also potential for breakouts from someone like Isaac Paredes.
Yes, I agree.
Who had a really good stretch last year where he was hitting a home run like every game for like 8 games or something like that. He was doing really well. So if I had to put a label on it, I'd put the Rays as my AL sleeper team. NL sleeper team. Padres. No one's sleeping on the Padres.
No.
I don't think I have NL sleeper team. I got no one really.
That's fair. It is kind of tough to find one.
Yeah,
maybe the Cubs.
Maybe. I think the Cubs. I think there's. Sure, I'll make a justification for the Cubs.
Okay.
I think that rotation has really good potential, considering they've signed Stroman and Tyon, but yeah, they might not even be the best two starters in that rotation. Considering Justin Steele, if there's more innings out of Justin Steele, he could really make a great impact. Hayden Wesneski is your player to watch. A full year out of him could be interesting. He had great strikeout to walk numbers, as you mentioned. In 2022, he had those great numbers. Made some additions to the bullpen. That bullpen isn't going to be awful. And who's to say? I know I've just said I'm not. I can't really pretend to get excited about Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
But who's to say? This year isn't the year. There's potential for it, and then they already have. Dansby Swanson has been an established good player, or at least as of last year, along with I don't know. I don't have too many notes, but that's what I'll say about the Cubs is Don't go fully asleep on them, even though they only won 74 games last year.
Yeah.
Awards or questions?
Let's do awards, questions, playoffs.
Sounds good. Who do you have for the American League Rookie of the Year?
For the American League, for both my Rookie of the Years, I went with guys I had as players to watch. In the AL, I took Masataka Yoshida. I think he's going to translate very nicely over to the U.S. I mean, he hit very well in the World Baseball Classic. And I'm sure a lot of the Major League competition will be better than what he faced in his pool. But he still did very well against Mexico, against the U.S. I think he's going to adjust very nicely to Major League pitching. I guess the one question I have is how does he fare at Fenway as a left-handed hitter? He seems to really hook into that corner a lot. It'll be interesting to see, but I think he's going to take home the American League Rookie of the Year award. How about you?
Call me a homer.
Yeah.
But for the second time in 3 years, I have the American League Rookie of the Year going to a Red Sox player. I think I'm a little more confident in this one than I was with Bobby Dahlbeck.
Oh, yeah.
Although I
Hopefully
did
this one just ends up better, even if they don't win it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like Dahlbeck heading into 2021 based on spring and how he did the year before in that 1 September that he had. But yeah, I have Yoshida. This goes against the obvious favorite, which is Gunnar Henderson. What I have to say with Yoshida is he's 29, so he just generally has a lot more baseball experience than the rest of the field, which is an advantage, which is partially why I think some people kind of campaign for Japanese players to not be eligible because they already have that sort of quote-unquote major league experience in Japan.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's eligible here, obviously. Also, I could be buying into that WBC hype, considering he hit 409 with a 1258 OPS in that WBC. He also I parsed through every Baseball Savant game, all the game data, and he had a 47.8% sweet spot rate.
Holy crap.
In the tournament.
I thought you were gonna say hard hit rate, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
League average is about 33%. So
yeah.
Directionally, he's hitting the ball in the right space. He also only had 1 strikeout in the tournament.
I mean, for perspective, Nolan Jones had a 49.1% sweet spot rate, and that was the highest in the league among 50 batted ball players.
And there were 497 of them. Masataka Yoshida also had 1 strikeout in the tournament. There were 29 other players with 20-plus at-bats in the WBC. Only Yoshida and Mookie Betts had only 1 strikeout.
Not only that, but I think the idea, like the whole notion of like not striking out is something that the writers will like.
Yeah, true. So what I'll say on why I'm not picking Gunnar Henderson is I think he's a great candidate, and I think it's obvious why he is the favorite. I'm just a little concerned about his ground ball rate from last year. Along with that, the other top candidate would be like Anthony Volpe. Anthony Volpe. I think he's interesting, but I think we're getting a little bit excited about what he did in spring training, which was great overall. But I think maybe we're getting a little bit excited about that. Although
don't get me wrong, he deserves to be on the opening day roster.
No doubt about it. Yeah,
that's fair though.
But yeah, I pick Yoshida for all those reasons. Also, it helps to just be sort of a quote unquote veteran being eligible for this award. Who do you have for National League Rookie of the Year?
For NL Rookie of the Year, I have Gavin Stone of the Dodgers, a starting pitcher who did very well last year. The Dodgers have some open spots in that rotation, and I think he's going to be on a big stage every night regardless because he's on the Dodgers. If the Dodgers were to overtake the Padres and win that division, I could see Gavin Stone being a big part of that, and I could see that being some good leverage for him in the award voting.
Yeah. For National League Rookie of the Year, I did not go off the map at all. I went with Corbin Carroll. I figured I'd go with a favorite. Service time won't be played with, so that's a big bonus. I can't say that about all the candidates. He's a fantastic fielder and base runner, and he had a 1035 OPS in the minors last year. All things point to him being good this year, so I'll take it if I'm wrong. But I really believe in him being Rookie of the Year this year.
Did you have Julio as your Rookie of the Year last year?
I did, yeah.
Okay, because I was going to ask if any of us have ever gotten this right.
Yeah,
But okay, you did last year.
I got Julio, and
I don't think I had Julio. I don't remember who I had though.
You had Matt Brash.
I did have Matt Brash. Yeah.
the other choices I could have chosen.
We're like Adley, Bobby Witt.
Bobby Witt. So I don't
Yeah.
feel too bad about taking J-Rod because he was like the number 3 prospect behind
Those other two.
two other AL guys. So yeah,
And
I did.
neither of us had Michael Harris a second.
Nope.
I don't think. And then 2021 was what? Jonathan India and
Yeah, no. Arozarena.
Randy Rose. I guess one of us probably should have had that one.
Yeah,
I don't
true.
know if we did or not. And then 2020 was Devin Williams and Kyle Lewis, which I don't think we had.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Arozarena was the obvious choice. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's fun to go off the grid a little bit. Manager of the year, we could go over briefly.
Yeah.
Who do you have for AL Manager of the Year?
I have Scott Service. He didn't win it last year. I thought there was a case for him. Yeah, I think that's kind of it.
I have Pedro Grifol based on how my standings
That
go.
makes sense.
Because yeah, if the White Sox hypothetically in Christopher's world,
Mm-hmm.
if the White Sox win the division, Grifol would be the most deserving, unless someone had an upset or whatever. National League Manager of the Year.
My NL Manager of the Year corresponds with my sleeper team. I'm going with Derek Shelton. I don't think he's exactly the greatest manager, but that's not really what we consider in this award. We just consider who managed the team that did better than they were supposed to. And I just think the Pirates are the team that are going to perform better than they're supposed to.
Yeah, since I don't really have any sleeper teams, my National League Manager of the Year is so stupid. It's Bob Melvin.
Yeah.
Out of San Diego.
Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna. I don't think there's really much of a chance he wins it. It's just.
I think if they unseed the Dodgers, there's like an easy possibility of it.
I think they'd have to win like 105 games.
That's fair.
Which maybe they could do. However, I think what'll end up happening is some NL team will rise. Could be the Pirates.
Yeah.
And whatever NL team does that, they'll get Manager of the Year. I doubt that Bob Melvin will end up getting it, but in my hypothetical world, where the standings are what they are, Bob Melvin gets that National League Manager of the Year. Now on to the Cy Young, AL Cy Young.
So this is kind of where I go off the beaten path here, as you indicated last year with our famous AL Cy Young picks.
Yeah.
I'm picking the guy who was 4th in the major leagues among all pitchers in F4 last year from July 1st through the end of the season.
Ooh.
This is a guy that I put as a player to watch, a guy that I've indicated in this episode I expect a lot out of. I'm going with Tristan McKenzie as my AL Cy Young pick. Give it to me. Tristan McKenzie has been one of the best pitchers in baseball over the last few months of the 2022 season. I think he kind of figured a lot out about himself as a pitcher, and I got him going all the way this year.
Nice. It's a good pick. For American League Cy Young, I'm going with the first half Cy Young of last year. I'm going with Shane McClanahan. He fell off a little bit, but I think he will stay on track and be American League Cy Young this year. Great strikeout and walk numbers that never changed from Shane McClanahan last year. Over 30% strikeout rate, under 6% walk rate. It's spectacular. Also, very good batted ball profile. All his percentiles are shifted over to the right in red. On that Baseball Savant page. He allowed 20 home runs last year, but according to StatCast, 17.6 expected home runs. So I think some of them just snuck out of there. Maybe ballpark-specific stuff. You never know with the AL East. Although he is pitching for the same team, he had 2.4 more. He allowed 2.4 more home runs than he was expected to, according to StatCast. So maybe that could correct itself this year. Along with that, he should be good with preventing home runs because he was 68th percentile in barrel rate last year. He allowed barrels at a better than average rate. And innings wise, last year he had one brief IL stint through 166 and a third innings pitch. I'd expect a little jump in innings this year, maybe to get to 180, 190. Innings aren't the biggest thing with Cy Young sometimes. We saw last year Justin Verlander only had 175, and the year before that, Corbin Burns only had 167. So, Sandy Alcantara is sort of an outlier sometime, outlier to some of these guys, but, I'd expect, I think Shane McClanahan is a very good candidate.
Yeah.
and that's why I have him winning the Cy Young, Shane McClanahan. Who do you have for National League Cy Young?
So for my NL Cy Young, I'm going with a little more of a mainstream guy. I don't know if he's the first guy that you'd ever think of, but he's definitely someone that should be in the conversation. I'm talking about Max Fried. I think he's going to be the NL Cy Young. He finished second last year. I think he's going to get you a lot of innings, which I think will be valuable to the writers. He threw 185 last year, 165 the year before. He's been very good at not giving up home runs and not walking people. I think maybe we see a rise in strikeout rate from him this year because he has been under a guy per inning for most of the dominant portion of his career. I see him taking another step forward somehow. But I'm going with Max Fried as my Cy Young pick.
Yeah, so my National League Cy Young pick is the only pitcher riding 2 straight qualified seasons with a 1.40 ERA plus or better and a sub 3.50 FIP, and that pitcher is Max Fried.
Wow.
We're matching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Max Fried as a Cy Young candidate. Above average strikeout numbers last year. Elite walk numbers, elite batted ball profile through 185 innings as well. And I don't know, it just seems like it could be his year.
It does feel like it. Like the way it was Paul Goldschmidt's year last year, it feels like this is going to be Max Fried's year.
Right. And like, with these NL pitchers, there's a lot of good NL pitchers, and some will have their years. I know at some point it'll be Zach Wheeler's year, but I think this year... Aaron Nola's year. At one point it was
Zach Gallen's year.
Right. At one point, it was Corbin Burns's. Last year it was obviously Sandy Alcantara's. I think this year it's Max Fried's year to win that NL Cy Young. All right, AL MVP.
Yeah. I made a Shohei pick and a non-Shohei pick. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm taking Shohei Ohtani because if you don't pick him and you're wrong, you're just gonna hate yourself. So my non-Shohei pick is Adley Rutschman. I loved seeing the steps that he took in such a short time last year. He had the third highest position player FWAR from like June on last year, behind only Manny Machado and Aaron Judge, I think it was, or Nolan Arenado and Aaron Judge. That's what it was. But I really love Adley as a good MVP pick, especially as a catcher. I think there are possible steps forward he could take offensively. Defensively, he's already got himself figured out. He's a good base runner too. So I'm going with Adley Rutschman as my non-Shohei pick, but I am ultimately taking Shohei.
Yeah, AL MVP. I'm also taking Shohei Ohtani.
Oh my God, we match.
Yeah, we match. No way, yeah.
Dude. I didn't think you were. I thought I was being under the radar.
I did pick Kyle Tucker last year.
Yeah.
Didn't work out, although he had a good year, but he was not close to
No.
Ohtani's level or Judge's level ultimately. So I have like alternate candidates too.
Yeah.
So with Shohei Ohtani, let's remember he had 666 plate appearances and had an expected WOBA in the 98th percentile. He also faced 660 batters as a pitcher and had an expected ERA in the 91st percentile. Only way I see him not winning is if he misses like at least a third of the season. I think injuries are the only thing that could be in his way, and we haven't seen that in the past 2 years at all. So I think Ohtani's on track to win that MVP. It would be really hard for Judge to repeat what he did last year. While Ohtani, he was at the plate, he was unlucky. He was I think 6th unluckiest in slugging minus expected slugging out of 81 hitters with 400 plus batted balls.
Yeah.
So there's potential Ohtani could be even better this year. Judge, it would be hard to see that come true. My runner-up candidates include Jose Ramirez, obviously,
Yeah.
and Corey Seager. Who knows? We could see.
Second time taking Corey Seager on this show.
Right? Yeah. I'm throwing him out as a mention.
Yeah.
But he's someone that could break out, especially he's a shortstop, so he has that advantage to climb up the ranks. And I think he was third in MVP in his rookie year. So
Yeah, I think he was too.
That was pretty cool. Who do you have for NL MVP?
I've never had to think about this award in all of the time that we've done this show. I'm taking Juan Soto, and I'm going to do it every year until he wins it.
Yeah.
Because the year that I don't pick him, he's going to win it. So I'm taking Juan Soto as my MVP. I think he said in an interview that he was seeing the ball the same way that he saw it in the spring of 2020, where of course he went on to have an OPS over 1,100 in 47 games. So it's very encouraging. I think in his first full year in San Diego, he's going to adjust more nicely. He was struggling a little bit last year, but he sort of did figure it out over time. I'm taking Juan Soto as my NL MVP.
Yeah, that's well, I think that's 4 years in a row. Yeah.
Yes.
That's all four predictions episodes you've had. Juan Soto. I picked Juan Soto last year. I'm not repeating. That is your
That's my move.
that is Daniel TM. So what I'll say about the NL MVP, there are 2 National League players to have 6-win seasons in the past 2 years, according to Baseball Reference. 2 National League players. One of them won Most Valuable Player last year, and one of them will win Most Valuable Player this year. And the latter is Austin Riley. I have Austin Riley as my National League MVP. The MVP and the Cy Young will be from the same team with Max Fried and Austin
very
Riley.
Cool. That is a very fun pick.
So with Austin Riley, I think he's a young guy who has consistently been hitting the ball great. No one in the National League has had more barrels in the last 2 years than Austin Riley has. Only thing you could say about him is defense, and defensive evaluators have always been weird about Austin Riley. So
They have been, yeah.
I think last year,
2021 was like Fangraphs and Savant completely disagreed on him.
yeah. So who knows? I know it'll help his B WAR, it'll subtract from his F WAR.
Yep.
But I don't know how deeply the writers dive into that, and if he has like a 1050 OPS potentially, I don't think they're really going to be thinking about that. So Austin Riley is my National League MVP. All right, question time. I didn't write any questions.
That's fine. I have 5.
Awesome.
All right. On what day will we get the first sub 2 hour game?
On what day will we have this first sub 2 hour game? That's a good question.
I do not believe we've had one in spring training, like a full 9-inning game.
So there was one last year, right, between the Rays and
Cardinals.
Cardinals.
It was an hour 59.
I'll say May 27.
All right. That is a Saturday.
You know the days around that week for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, May 27, I'll say.
Okay. Over under 9.5 pitch clock violation, strikeouts or walks, meaning strike 3 or ball 4 comes on a pitch clock violation. Over under 9.5 during the season.
I'll say. So, is it a thing where it's like automatic, where like everybody has to stop?
Yes, automatic walk or strikeout.
And like, does the umpire have to call it, or does the clock just run out? And
The umpire calls it. I don't think it really makes a difference.
I'm gonna say under, because I think umpires just don't want to mess with that. I think they're pretty old school too, and as long as it's not egregious, like we'll see that in football with the play clock. Sometimes it'll be on 0 for like a full second and no one calls anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my feeling. I don't have anything to back that up, but that's just my feeling. I think it'll be under.
All right. Over or under 250 league BABIP on ground balls. It was 241 last year. I think the highest it's been in the StatCast era is 249. Will we get a 250 BABIP on ground balls?
On ground balls. Last year, I think it was 241.
It was.
I'll say over, because I do think that analytics departments will figure some things out to counter that. I think it'll take a little bit. So I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to have data to swirl around with this year, but I think there's going to be some more things getting through. That's literally to make that change. It would have to be one more hit every 100 ground balls. So I'll take that. I'll take that for sure.
The next one, over under 0.5 qualified hitters with a BABIP over 400.
Ooh, good question.
I believe the last time we saw it was Yohan Moncada in 2019.
Right. And yeah, I'm trying to think. I think a lot of the players who have higher BABIPs, I feel like don't get shifted a crazy amount.
Yeah.
They're usually faster guys. So they typically don't do that. So I'll say under.
Okay.
I'll say under for that.
And my last question, this is a definitely more ARR based question. Who will be the last team to be featured on How About That? It was
Ooh.
the Mets in 2021 and the Reds in 2022.
Yeah. Um, yeah. that question has a lot of layers because
It does, because I don't want to say like the A's, because I feel like we will jump at any opportunity to talk about an A's player as soon as we can.
yeah, and it also requires like in order to be a how about that, you can't really be a top player.
Hmm.
We've never done a how about that on Shohei Ohtani. We've never done a how
We
about
never
that.
will,
We never will. We'll never do
unless he like falls off and then comes back. Like, yeah, I'll do one on Cody Bellinger if we
Right.
need to. But in 2019, I would have been like, yeah, there's no shot we're doing a How About That on Cody Bellinger.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so yeah, so like a team, if you're a top heavy team,
Hmm.
you're not going to get as much recognition. I imagine that we didn't have a lot on the White Sox last year.
That's exactly the team I was thinking.
Um, but so as far as a team, a top heavy team who I expect to maybe underperform is probably where I should go.
Yeah, and I don't think that's that's the White Sox for you.
I'll say not Giants. Giants have a good amount of under the radar players. Maybe the Phillies.
Okay,
Phillies,
not a bad one.
because they were pretty late last year too.
I can't wait to do one next week.
Yeah, I can't wait for Bryson Stott to have a 2,500 OPS in the first week. I'll say Phillies, because I think they were like fourth to last year, so who knows?
Ooh, you know what we gotta do? We should end this episode by doing matchups,
Oh yeah, right.
because
Yeah,
we're talking about live baseball.
true. We should do that. Because yeah, that starts on Thursday. All right. Now, postseason predictions.
Yes.
Who do you? So yeah, do you have like seeds and stuff?
I do.
All right. What do you got? AL
So-
wild card.
So I'll just tell you like my 1 to 6. So in the AL, I have the Astros with the 1 seed. I have the Blue Jays with the 2 seed. I have the Guardians with the 3 seed, and then my 4, 5, 6, I have the Mariners. I have the Yankees, and I have the Angels. I'm taking the bait. I made a comment earlier tonight.
Went out over the airwaves.
Yeah. No, but I mentioned earlier that the Angels play this game. It's like a challenge of the try not to believe in this team challenge, and I'm falling for it.
Yep.
So maybe I'll be a fool in June. Maybe I'll be right, but I'm taking the bait.
Yeah.
It's the last chance, really.
Yep. AL 1 through 6, I have Astros, Blue Jays, White Sox, then Yankees, Mariners, Rays.
Okay.
Not too different from last year. There's going to be
I think it's not the same 6.
there's
the
going to be an
Guardians.
AL East team in the 2, 4, and 6 seeds. There's going to be an AL Central team in the 3 seed, and Astros and Mariners will be in the 1 and 5. So, not too much creativity from Gianta today.
In the NL.
In the National League, who do you got?
So I have the Mets as the number 1 seed. I have the Padres as the 2, the Cardinals as the 3, and then in my wild cards I have Dodgers, Braves, Brewers. The only subtraction is the Cardinals. The only addition is the Phillies. Sorry, I do have Brewers over Phillies.
Yep.
In my playoffs, I'm worried about that injury history, and plus they just barely made it last year, and I think the Brewers have gotten better.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the Philly. There is a good amount to be concerned with the Phillies.
Yeah, they did add Trey Turner, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
National League 1 through 6, I have Braves, then Padres, and then Cardinals. Obviously, is 3, and then 4, 5, 6. I have Dodgers, Mets, and Phillies. So it's no additions to the playoffs, which I know
Great. Boring.
will not happen. I know will not happen, but those are my predictions.
Yeah.
All right, so how do you have the AL wild card going down?
Sure. So I have Angels over Guardians as the 6-3. if the Angels can find their way into the playoffs, I really like that rotation and that lineup, obviously, in a short series. I think it's definitely one of those cases where, it's all about which bullpen gets hot, and, the Angels have that potential, certainly. But I really like that squad in a short series against pretty much anyone, honestly. I also have Mariners over Yankees in the 4-5, and that's the AL. And in the NL, I have Brewers over Cardinals. I also like that rotation a lot. And I have Braves over Dodgers, which is very funny to picture that in the NL wild card.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is true. Yeah, for sure. AL wild card, I have Rays over White Sox in the 6-3. And then I have Mariners over Yankees in the 5. I think the Mariners are really specifically built for the playoffs. It's an anomaly that they.
It doesn't feel right that the Astros swept them. It
Yeah.
feels like they won a game because they should have won game 1.
Absolutely.
Game 3, they had a lot of good moments. They just couldn't score.
And
And even game 2, they were leading at points.
Yeah, they were leading 2-0 to start that game.
Yeah. They had the big comeback against the Blue Jays. They embarrassed them on their home turf.
Yeah, they have a good team built for the playoffs with how deep their bullpen is, how great the top of their rotation is, and they can fill in their moments offensively. They don't have a dreadful offense, so they can fill in at their moments and do well in the clutch moments potentially. I know obviously that's just kind of happenstance, but yeah. And then in the NL, I have Phillies over Cardinals, part 2, and then I have Dodgers over Mets. I have the Dodgers as the only home team winning in wild card
Nice.
week, I guess. All right, League Division Series.
I have Blue Jays over Angels. I do have the Angels run ending in Toronto. I have Mariners over Astros. I'm going for it. That could look stupid, but also it's March. Who cares?
It's March, yeah.
And then I have Padres over Brewers. That would be an absolute stomping.
Yeah.
And then I have Braves over Mets. The
Um,
Mets would be the home team in that case.
Yep. In the ALDS, I also have Mariners over Astros.
Nice.
I think it's more basically to shout them out because that wasn't. I know it was a sweep, but it wasn't really a sweep. And I think the Mariners, just mentality-wise, would be a little more ready to go, a little more playoff experience. And the Astros they're a great team, but they're a little less than they were last year, probably. At least without Verlander. And then the other ALDS, I have Blue Jays over Rays. In the NLDS, I have Braves over Dodgers, and then I have Padres over Phillies.
Do we have the same CSs?
I
I have Blue Jays, Mariners, Braves, Padres.
Yep, we do.
Nice.
Yep.
Of
All
course we
right.
do.
What is your LCS?
All right. Say it with me. Blue Jays over Mariners.
Yes, I have
And
that.
Braves over Padres.
I also have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have with Blue Jays over Mariners, I think the same way the Mariners will overcome the Astros, the Blue Jays will overcome the Mariners. And I also don't forget about playoff Toronto, especially if they get a little deeper than last year.
So just to recap, we both wait. Are you gonna go over the other one?
And yeah, Braves over Padres. I don't know. I just think the Braves are the deeper team.
Yeah. All right. So we both have Blue Jays and Braves in the World Series, a 1992 rematch.
Yes.
All right. On 3, say your winner. 1, 2, 3.
Braves.
Nice.
Wow.
Perfect. So we
Look at
have the
us.
same CSs, we have the same World Series, and we have the same winner.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
That's
well,
peak ARR right there.
peak ARR.
Yeah.
Core
wow.
values.
Mhm.
Core values of ARR. Yeah. Well, that does it for
We got to do matchups.
predictions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Matchups. I rearranged my phone app, so I got to go to the MLB
Yeah.
thing.
By the way, there's a new feature that I'm definitely going to use for our F4 league on the MLB app, where instead of teams or in addition to teams, you can also follow players. Where it's like you get a notification where it's like, I don't know how often it works. I don't know if it's like this guy's coming up to bat or if it's just like, hey, Mike Trout homered.
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
exactly. I would be weird if it was just like Mike Trout grounds out in the bottom of the fourth.
Yeah.
The Angels and Mariners are tied 0-0.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. For those just popping in, if you haven't ever listened to Above Replacement Radio in the regular season, every week or every episode, we preview, what we have ahead. At least the series ahead. I talk about the team matchups, series to watch. Daniel talks about day by day the pitchers that are going and the specific, pitcher on pitcher matchups, which I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a load of.
Oh yeah, opening
to
day
start
is
the
going to be
year.
tough, but not a lot is announced after opening day. So I think for pitching matchups, I'm just going to do opening day. I'll
Okay.
skip the other ones.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
In terms of series to watch, there's some decent ones out there. Astros, White Sox. I'm sure the Astros have the advantage, but there's some star power with those teams. Cardinals, Blue Jays. I have both as division winners. Interesting to start an interleague game
Yeah.
for opening day, but Cardinals hosting the Blue Jays. It's the Colby Rasmus game. Shout out to him. Along with that, Guardians, Mariners, a couple of young, fun teams playing against each other. And yeah, I'd say, and also Rangers, Phillies. Those are,
I'm sorry, you got to see this. This just happened in the Phillies spring training game. The JT Realmuto. Hang on. This is such a wild thing. Wait.
oh my God. Yeah,
He wasn't even looking.
if you're listening, check out the JT Realmuto ejection. It's pretty weird. Last year's I have to get to is Rangers Phillies. It's just pretty talent stacked. There's a lot of great players that are going to be in that game, and I think they're Sunday Night Baseball too.
Yeah. Wait,
Unless
who is it? Phillies and
Phillies Rangers, yeah.
that makes sense. Oh wow. You know what's so funny? We're still getting like Nola versus DeGrom on opening day.
Yeah.
It's like nothing's changed.
I'd say the best series to watch out of that, watch value wise, either Cardinals, Blue Jays, or Guardians, Mariners.
Yeah.
But those are both on different coasts, so
Mm-hmm.
you can check them out at different times.
So we got some fun opening day matchups. I'm just gonna go through everyone. In Braves Nationals, one of the two first games to get underway, we have our NL Cy Young winner, Patrick Corbin, going against Max Fried. I saw the opportunity there and I had to do it. Obviously, other way around.
Yeah,
In Giants Yankees, Arson Judge's first game with the Giants.
that's
Aaron
exciting.
Judge's first game back. We have Logan Webb versus Garrett Cole. That's going to be a fun one. The most riveting matchup is in Orioles Red Sox at 2:10. Kyle Gibson versus Corey Kluber.
Yeah,
Two Cy Youngs in that matchup.
who can just be more 35?
Who can be more 35? Yeah. Brewers Cubs, you have Corbin Burns versus Marcus Stroman. Tigers Rays, a couple of lefties in Eduardo Rodriguez and Shane McClanahan. Phillies Rangers, Aaron Nola versus DeGrom, like we previously mentioned. Fun one in Pirates Reds if you're like us and you appreciate under the radar starters. Mitch Keller versus Hunter Green. That's going to be an intriguing one. Rockies Padres, Herman Marquez versus Blake Snell. Blue Jays Cardinals, Alek Manoah versus Miles Michaelis. Twins Royals, Pablo Lopez making his Twins debut against Zach Greinke. You have I'll skip that one. In White Sox Astros, you have a 2021 playoff rematch. Dylan Cease versus Framber Valdez. In Angels and A's, you have Shohei Ohtani versus Kyle Muller.
Yeah,
One of those guys is awesome, and the other one is Kyle Muller. In Diamondbacks and Dodgers, you have Zach Allen versus Julio Urias. In Guardians Mariners, you have Shane Bieber versus Luis Castillo. And the matchup of the night comes from Mets Marlins in Miami. It's going to be Max Scherzer versus Sandy Alcantara.
yeah.
4 total Cy Youngs in that matchup. It's going to be a good one to watch.
Yeah, that's appointment television for sure. Hopefully, I don't have too much going on Thursday. It's that I'm really excited. Just hearing those matchups and whatnot, even hearing Green versus Keller, I'm like, damn, like that should be interesting.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah,
that'll be interesting. Like that's like the
Green will keep the Reds in the game.
That's like the 13th most exciting matchup.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all we got. That's all. That's not too much. Only like 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Only the best for the last show before opening day.
Yeah, predictions. This is what I will say. This is like the closest we can get to like a state of baseball address for both of us.
Honestly, yeah.
Like this is where we stand on all 30 teams. This is where we stand on a lot of players and what we expect of them. Outside of the players to watch and whatnot, but those guys are always under the radar. So this is the closest we can get to like a state of baseball address. So hope you enjoyed it, and hope you're going to enjoy what we have in store for the regular season and beyond that. If you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed the season's predictions episode, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking about Major League Baseball games
we will.
for the first time in several months. We will see you then.
This conversation is over.